Welcome to the Dragon Quest series speedrunning strategy video. Over the course of this video, we will be reviewing the speedrun strategy for each mainline Dragon Quest game, 1 through 11 on select consoles. For each game, the goal is to answer the question, what is the general speedrun strategy? Dragon Quest is a very large series, and most mainline games have multiple versions, but for the purposes of this video, we focus on choosing competitive titles with rich speedrun histories. Before jumping into the main video, let's briefly discuss Dragon Quest speedrunning history. Dragon Quest has been a staple in the history of RPG speedrunning, primarily in Japan as early as the late 2000s. For example, Dragon Quest III, one of the most popular entries in the series, has over 200 entries on the Japanese-only Nico Nico leaderboard alone, in addition to runners in the rest of the world. To this day, few other RPGs at all have this kind of speedrun activity. Dragon Quest runs are typically difficult and require a vast understanding of each game. The Japanese records are held to a very high standard, and to this day not one person from the West has contested a mainline Japanese record. However, many Dragon Quest games are localized, and many Westerners play the English versions. In this video, we'll be covering a mixture of run versions, and the focus isn't to comment specifically on record-breaking strategies, but to give the viewer a sense of understanding about what the speedrun strategy is for each game. The format for each game will be as follows. The game flow will be discussed for a few minutes, discussing what happens in the game, and any important mechanics to the run. Then a walkthrough of the speedrun strategy will take place, including the route, party and equipment build-out, and boss strategies. Each game is distinctly unique and offers a variety of strategies. The player begins Dragon Quest I in the world known as Alefgard. The player is given the task of defeating the Dragon Lord and has immediate access to many key locations on the map. However, they are all guarded by increasingly more dangerous enemies as the player strays from the starting area, known as Ratatome. The overall goal is to create the Rainbow Drop to access the final dungeon, Dragon Lord's Castle, which requires getting a few key items first. Standard progression usually involves visiting Garenham in the northwest and Myra in the northeast for clues, then proceeding towards Remolder in the southeast to gain access to the key shop. Keys are heavily used in this game, which are a finite resource that can be bought from certain shops or found in chests. From there, the Silver Harp can be found in Garen's tomb, which is traded for a Staff of Rain. Venturing to the southern part of the world map allows the player to defeat the Golem with the help of a fairy flute acquired in Myra. Earlier, rescuing the princess by defeating a green dragon helps the player retrieve the Token of Roto from the southern swamp via Laura's love item. Players typically retrieve Roto's armor from Domdora after fighting the Devil Knight. The Stones of Sunlight are located back in Ratatome Castle, and the Rainbow Drop is created by utilizing the Staff of Rain, the Stones of Sunlight, and the Token of Roto. During the journey to Dragon Lord's Castle, many enemies are fought, and Roto's sword is acquired along the way. The final battle with the Dragon Lord begins, involving a two-phase fight where the Dragon Lord transforms into a much stronger form. Peace is restored after the perilous battle. Although Dragon Quest I may be the shortest of all Dragon Quest games, it is certainly one of the most closely studied games for speedrunning, and the run strategy is far from simple. The speedrun category showcased here is commonly referred to as Dragon Loop, which will make more sense later, but it is a run that primarily disallows glitches and randomness manipulations. The run is a straight and narrow speedrun that fights most enemy encounters. The player immediately starts by choosing a specific name for the hero. The hero's stat growths are based on name entry, and the name chosen prioritizes strength and HP growth for the hero. From the start of the game in Ratatome, the player heads to Myra immediately, gaining some early levels and acquiring the Fairy Flute. Death Warps are commonly used early on to return back to Ratatome. Stat Seeds, which are one-time consumable items that permanently increase stats, are an important part of Dragon Quest speedrunning, but are especially critical in this game. The player saves the game, then rolls the Strength Seed to see if a 2 or a 3 is achieved. If not, reset and try again. After a quick visit to Garai for some herbs and torches, the player heads to Rocky Mountain Cave. More enemies are defeated, and the player opens a specific chest repeatedly that has a 1 in 16 chance of giving the Death Necklace, which sells for 1200 gold. An iron shield and some stat seeds are acquired, then a death warp is taken back to town. Next, the player heads towards Remolder to purchase a steel sword and some keys, which will be needed for Garai's tomb. With these, a chainmail from Garai, and the iron shield, the player dives into Garai's tomb to retrieve the silver harp, aiming for level 7 to 8 upon completion. With the fairy flute in hand, the player proceeds towards Melchido, which is guarded by the golem. Players navigate world map movement in a specific way to reduce encounters by using what's called half-step techniques to minimize the threat of encounters. And it's important to note that the player must have a game plan for every single encounter in the game, which also may change based on the player's level and resources. Upon arriving at the golem can be put to sleep every few turns by using the fairy flute, and is defeated at a fairly low level with careful planning, which nets valuable experience for the hero. The player enters Melchido to get some more stat seeds and resources, then heads back to Ratatome. Now, the player must essentially prepare to defeat the Dragon Lord, which requires gaining a lot of levels. Level 18 is the goal to safely defeat the Dragon Lord, though the very fastest times in this game get to level 17 and often rely upon a critical hit to win. As mentioned earlier, the common name for this run is called Dragon Loot, which refers to the act of defeating the green dragon guarding Princess Laura for valuable experience points, then taking a death warp after the fight to respawn the green dragon. This is the fastest way, outside of attempting to get lucky metal slime kills, to gain levels. This is performed 7 times, which gets the player to around level 14. There is a shifting game plan for how to fight the green dragon encounter based on the hero's level and resources per encounter, which generally gets easier as the hero gains levels. The player grabs the Staff of Rain, then heads to Domdora to get Roto's armor. The Devil Knight fight is very straightforward, but not exactly safe. It can put the hero to sleep, which often is a loss, but otherwise the hero simply attacks until it is defeated. Roto's armor is incredible armor that restores HP while walking and negates poison tile damage. The player then heads towards the southern swamp of Melchido to get the Rotos token, then grinds many encounters here to get just above level 17. With Roto's armor to restore HP during walking, the player can fairly sustainably hunt enemies here until they are ready to proceed towards the endgame. The rainbow drop is created, then the player heads towards Dragon Lord's castle. In the dungeon, Roto's sword is acquired, which is a valuable attack boost and absolutely worth retrieving. Enough battles are fought to get to level 18 by the time the player reaches the final boss. Dragon Lord's first form is fairly straightforward, and the player must manage resources well to end the fight with a decent amount of HP going into Phase 2. The boss can put the hero to sleep, and generally uses physical attacks and Firebane for damage. Dragon Lord can also heal himself as an indicator that he is low on health. Dragon Lord's second form is much more nuanced and dangerous. The pattern is strong breath attack, physical attack, weak breath attack, and then finally either fire breath or physical attack. The player must pay close attention to what is referred to as HP recovery lines, which indicates to the player if they can attack or must heal based on numeric thresholds. At level 18, as long as the player did not waste too much MP leading up to Dragon Lord Phase 2, the hero usually has enough resources to win the fight. However, as mentioned before, level 17 fights often require a critical hit and generally good luck on the pattern to win. After the battle, the player returns to Ratatome, and the credits sequence closes the game out. Taking place 100 years after Dragon Quest I, Dragon Quest II is set in an expanded world. The hero, the Prince of Laurasia, is given the task of finding and defeating Hargon, an evil wizard plotting world destruction. Laurasia finds his way around his homeland's continent, chasing down and recruiting his cousin Semiratoria. They make their way to Moonpeta, finding Princess of Moonbrook in dog form, and find the raw mirror to help her return to her form. Traveling to the Tower of Wind for a wind mantle, then the western edges of the world to traverse the Dragon's Horn Towers, they make their way to Rupagana to gain access to a ship. The goal now becomes to seek out the 5 crests scattered throughout the world. They fight through many random encounters, a few bosses, and eventually collect all 5, giving them access through the cave of Rondarkia, the game's final area. With the aid of the charm from Rubus, Hargon's delusions are dispelled and the team climbs Hargon's castle, defeating multiple bosses along the way. Finally, Hargon is fought and defeated at the top, only to reveal the final sacrifice for the Lord of Destruction, Saido. After a treacherous fight, the team fights and destroys Saido. Dragon Quest II features a few upgrades from the previous original entry, including the ability to have 3 party members in combat and thus multiple roles for the team. Laurasia, the hero, is a straight physical warrior, Semiratoria is the all-around character, and Moonbrook is the mage-type character. Dragon Quest I and II for the Super Famicom use the same game engine, as they were released on the same cart. As we review the speedrun, Dragon Quest II is unique in that almost every random encounter after the very beginning of the game is fought as part of the journey to prepare the team's levels for both traversing new areas and for bosses, whereas many other entries in the series for speedrunning avoid or run from encounters. The game requires a very deep understanding of random encounters and how to handle them, depending on a variety of factors including party level and resources. For the sake of brevity, this won't be repeatedly discussed during the video, but it is important to understand how vital this is. For the speedrun, the hero, Laurasia, sells his sword, buys some herbs and defensive gear, and heads to the Spring of Bravery for a story trigger. An important aspect of the early game of this run is to gain lottery tickets from the shop with specific purchasing, which then allows the player to sell the ticket back for more gold. In Ririzia, where Semiratoria is found and recruited, an ever larger lottery ticket sequence takes place to gear up the party. Leveling up along the way to the town of Moonpeta, the Mirror of Ra is retrieved immediately to gain access to Moonbrook, the party member. Preparations are made to tackle the Tower of Wind by leveling up and visiting Moonbrook Castle for some stat seeds. In the Tower of Wind, encounters start to become more interesting. Semiratoria can use Fireball, and Moonbrook can use Sleep and Infernos, while Laurasia supports with physical attacks like usual. The Wind Mantle and a Prayer Ring are obtained here too. Back to Moonpeta Town for a steel sword for Laurasia, off to Dragonhorn's Tower afterwards. Metal slimes appear along the way, but are generally a trap and not worth fighting now. In the Dragon's Horn Tower, a Dew's yarn can be picked up, which will be instrumental later. In the town of Rupagana, the armor called Clothes Hiding is purchased from Moonbrook, which gives her a higher evade chance in battle. Gremlins are fought here and cleared easily with the Fireball and Inferno spells, and a ship is acquired. With the ship, the game is wide open, but many of the game's areas are very dangerous and proper preparations must be made. The goal is to collect 5 crests, but as is common with Dragon Quest speedruns, resources are first collected before attempting to fight any upcoming bosses. With the ship, the island town of Zahan is visited immediately to get the golden key. Unlike in other games, the Rura or return spell takes the party back to the last visited town only, so routing must be carefully planned. A trip back to Laurasia Castle to access the vault for Rodo's token, then to Shrine of Fire to get Rodo's helmet and the Sun Crest, first of 5 crests. Visits to the World Tree are common here for World Leaf, and we'll be back later. With the Golden Key, the underground town of Perupoi is available, and the Jailer's Key is bought and the Watergate Key is found. A quick visit to Semiratoria Castle for the Rodo Shield, then back to Zahan for the Magic Loom and Prayer Ring from the vaults. In Laurasia, the next major encounter is fought, the Devil Priest. This fight is optional and a very dangerous and narrowly won fight. It can physical attack and use Exploda, defense, and increase spells. Exploda is extremely dangerous. The goal is to land Stop Spell immediately, causing him to only attack, then to land Surround so that his accuracy is 50%. A large tree of outcomes must be known by the player to prepare for this fight. Defeating it gives the Thunder Staff, an incredibly valuable tool for clearing the speedrun. Although the fight is optional for standard play, it's almost required for the speedrun. Off to Durkendal, the arena castle, where the Gaia armor is retrieved, and the Killer Tiger is fought for the Moon Crest. It is a simple fight, but the boss still does high damage. Unlike most other enemies, this enemy has an equal chance of targeting each character rather than having priority towards the characters in the lead. 2 trips are made to the area of Tepa, where the Full Moon Tower is. This area is particularly treacherous for low levels, but the experience from fighting encounters help heavily. There are a large variety of monsters and encounter formations here. The first visit is made solely to drop off the magic loom and Dew's yarn, to later make the water flying clothes, invaluable equipment for Moonbrook. Resetting the game and reloading will trigger the loom operator to finish making the clothes. Back to Parapoi to buy a light sword for Laurasia and a dragon killer for Samaratoria, then off to Baran, a very important location for saving and accessing the rest of the world. Staying at the inn causes Samaratoria to fall ill and stay behind until he is given a world leaf, but this is avoided by only using the inn if there is at least one knocked out party member. Then back to Tepa to get the water flying clothes. Samaratoria gets the clothes hiding, and then off to the Full Moon Tower. Moonbrook's ability to use the sleep spell is incredibly important here, as she is fast and reasonably reliable in combat. Some stat seeds, a prayer ring, and the moon fragment are obtained. Prayer rings restore MP on use, but have a small chance to break. They are critical to completing the speedrun reasonably fast, and having too many broken prayer rings is hard to recover from. Off to the Great Lighthouse, southeast of Rubugana. The long dungeon means MP conservation is important. Moonbrook gets to use her wizard staff for single target damage to save MP. 4 gremlins are fought at the top and appear in a random formation. The player looks out for one rare and rogue formation that can cause a soft lock. The fight is simple, using attacks and Infernos clears them out. The Star Crest is retrieved 3 of 5. In Moonpeta Town, 2 Bevels guard the Water Crest. They are 100% susceptible to sleep, but do have high damage output. The next major dungeon is the Undersea Cave, accessible with the Moon Fragment. This area has a litany of dangerous encounters, and a boss encounter at the end. Based on how well Laurasia's strength rolls have been to this point, the player may fight encounters slightly differently. A magic armor is obtained on the way down, then the 2 times Hell's Emissary fight is fought. Thankfully, the boss encounter is quite easy, and if sleep lands on either, the fight is often won easily. Afterwards, the idol of the evil spirit is retrieved. With 4 crests and the idol in hand, the cave to Rondarkia is accessible. A massive cave with a ton of random encounters, the player must be ready. A number of helpful items are here, including the required life crest, the last of 5, and the lightning sword, a great sword for Laurasia. Some items retrieved here can be sold for high value, including the death shield. The encounters are increasingly more dangerous, featuring flames, killing machines, and green dragons in the later parts of the dungeon. The lightning sword is particularly helpful, being used as an item in combat. Finally arriving in this game's final area, Rondarkia, the grind ever continues to get more levels. The initial goal is to make it to the shrine, which allows the player to go back to Baran. In Baran, final purchases are made. The Shield of Strength allows Samaratoria to heal himself in battle for no MP, a huge asset. One final trip outside of Rondarkia, the Charm of Rubis is acquired, and a World Leaf is stocked, then back to Rondarkia. The final journey commences, heading towards Hargon's castle. Rubis's charm dispels the illusion, and the castle is entered. Almost all encounters are fought on the way here, and it's finally time to grind. Before discussing this upcoming grind, it's worth mentioning that speedruns have a very small chance of encountering and defeating liquid metal slimes, also known as Hagure metal, which help immensely. Speedrunners often denote how many Hagure metals they get in their runs as a qualification. This video segment has largely been discussing encounters briefly, but now with this grind, it's time to discuss some of the complexities of dealing with encounters. First off, the goal of this grind is to get to level 25 with Samaratoria by the time of reaching Belial. Samaratoria learns the Revive spell then, a necessity for the final gauntlet. Hargon's castle first floor is where grinding takes place between levels 18 and 22. As noted before, encounters feature a large array of possibilities for which monsters join, so the player must have a game plan for each type of formation. There are 5 types of enemies here. Dragons, who give a lot of experience and are taken down with the lightning sword, firebane, and sleep spells. Flames are put to sleep and defeated by physical attack only. Killer machines are very dangerous, and the player must cast surround to decrease their hit rate, then cast defense to lower their defense. Devil Lords cast spells, but are vulnerable to stop spell and sleep. Archdemons appear alone and have a small chance to drop a prayer ring. The player must balance handling these enemy groups how they appear together, and subtleties of how these encounters can be cleared efficiently arise based on the party's levels, specifically regarding the speed stats. For example, a common encounter is Killer Machine and 2 other types of enemies, where the player decides usually to prioritize immediately taking out the Killer Machine and putting another group to sleep. Prayer rings are utilized heavily to speed up the grind. At level 23, Samaratoria learns the Defeat spell, instrumental for clearing encounters, as the dragons and flames are susceptible. The second floor houses more aggressive formations of the same enemies, but for more EXP reward. Finally, after grinding enough, the party heads towards the first of the 3 mini-bosses, Atlas, and hopes to evade dangerous encounters along the way. Atlas is a straight physical boss, and always does a double physical attack on whoever he chooses. He will never critical. Moonbrook almost always goes first, but it's not guaranteed. The game plan is to increase defense, heal, and attack. Hopefully no one gets knocked out, but if someone does, Bazuzu, the next boss, is still clearable in some cases. Bazuzu is up next, and can be put both to sleep and killed instantly by the Defeat spell at a 25% chance rate. Bazuzu uses a plethora of spells including Firebane, Explode, and Defeat, and can even cast Heal All on itself. If it goes to sleep, the party can reduce its defense and hammer away. The last of the 3 guardians, Belial, guards Hargon's final ascent. Belial is not susceptible to most debuffs, attacks twice per turn, uses Explode and Strong Breath attacks. Under 50% health, he has a 30% chance to cast Heal All, a large problem. The initial strategy is to increase defense and stay very healed. Then as he approaches 50%, the party goes all out. Physical attacks and Moonbrook casting Explode. Samaratoria's Revive spell can help if Moonbrook dies in battle. Afterwards, some re-inventorying is done, prayer rings are used, and Hargon is fought. The Hargon and Saito fights are not consecutive fights, so the party can prepare and heal for Saito afterwards. Hargon is quite similar to Belial in moveset, but cannot heal himself. He can use Sweet Breath to put the party to sleep, which is very dangerous. He is only partially susceptible to Stop spell. The game plan is similar: increase defense, attack, and heal. MP is invaluable for the next fight, so the player must decide between reserved or aggressive play, depending on how much MP and prayer rings are remaining. Finally, the final boss, Saito, appears. Easily the most threatening encounter in the game. He uses Violent, Fire Breath, increase and decrease spells, and incredibly strong physical attacks with a chance to attack twice. Samaratoria is critical to this fight, as if he dies, no one can reliably revive, and the fight is probably lost. Saito is susceptible to defense down and can be surrounded at a 25% rate, which will last for the remainder of the fight. The light sword item can be used as an item to cast surround too. The early parts of the battle are played extremely carefully, increasing defense and attempting to land surround. Both Laurasia and Samaratoria can use the Shield of Strength to heal themselves, while Moonbrook has the Heal All spell. The boss does not have any pattern, and sometimes cooperates and sometimes does not. The Violent Breath attack is extremely dangerous, and an unlucky physical follow-up can spell doom. After landing the defense spell twice, Laurasia and Samuratoria can dish out significant damage. Near the end of the fight, Moonbrook can help with Explodette, and all attempts at damage are made. Finally, Saito goes down, the party returns to their homes, closing out the chronological end of the Roto series. The player starts Dragon Quest III as the hero. The beginning sequence features a personality test at a waterfall, which dictates the hero's starting personality, which then influences stat growths. The player then sets out to defeat Baramos and has the option of bringing along allies. 3 party members can join the hero, and the player can choose which classes to recruit. The player can recruit allies that have the classes Warrior, Fighter, Mage, Cleric, Merchant, Jester, and Thief. The hero is not available as a starting class, and the hero themselves cannot change class. And the Sage is only available after leveling a Jester to 20 or getting a Book of Satori and changing class. The player then begins to explore the world, looking primarily in the early game for a ship to sail the world for a way to find and defeat Baramos. Typical progression involves defeating Kandar at Champagne Tower, going to the pyramid to obtain the magic key, then defeating Kandar once again in the Baharata area to eventually give access to a ship. Then the player learns about collecting 6 orbs to awaken Ramia, which allows for transportation to Baramos' castle. The player collects a number of key items including the final key on their journey, and 2 major boss fights stand in the way, Boss Troll and Orochi. Once the orbs are collected, Ramia is awakened, and the player engages with Baramos, a formidable and challenging boss. The player then learns how Zoma, the Archfiend, was Baramos' master and soon descends to the Dark World, which is the continent where Dragon Quest I takes place. After collecting the Stones of Sunlight and the Rain Staff, the player then makes the Rainbow Drop and enters Zoma's castle. A boss rush awaits the player at the end of the castle, featuring King Hydra, Barabros, and Zombie Baramos, and then finally the player encounters and defeats Zoma. For the speedrun, the personality test at the beginning of the game is optimized for both getting the fastest outcome to begin playing the game, and for getting the personality that results in the best stat growths for the hero. Lazy is chosen as the personality in the vast majority of runs, and trades speed and wisdom for stamina and strength gain. Notice the Iron Man and Tough personalities here and their huge stamina growths, which we'll discuss for the upcoming allies to be recruited. 3 allies are chosen, prioritizing getting the Tough or Iron Man personalities, which is dependent on stat levels after using stat enhancing seeds as part of the recruiting process. The first recruit is the Warrior, who will never change class, and generally is the tank for the run. The Warrior will have the highest stamina, which influences the highest HP growth. Next is the Thief, who is a good class in the early game with high speed and ability to equip whips to hit multiple targets, and learns the Tiptoe ability to reduce encounters. Finally, the Mage will be responsible for learning important spells, most importantly the By-Kill spell. We'll discuss class changes later. The player begins their journey by accessing the Tower of Najimi through the underground, and then climb to the top to access the Thief's Key, required to leave the continent. The magic ball is retrieved in Reeve, and the Cave of Temptation is traversed. Some enemies in this area are dangerous, as the All-Mirage enemies can put the whole party to sleep. Afterwards, Romilly is entered and the party only recovers their HP and MP before leaving immediately. The walk to the pyramid begins, which is a straight shot walk timed precisely to end up in the castle town of Isis by nighttime. Both the walk to the pyramid and the pyramid itself are incredibly dangerous. The goal is to walk to the top and collect the magic key, which will give access to a large amount of money and is also required for story progression. This is a major reset point of the run, and many runs are lost on the way to the magic key. Recovering from a full party loss is extremely slow. The magic key is used immediately to raid the Castle Isis Vault at night and Eliahan Vault. Some of the gear will be sold, but the hero's armband gives plus 15 strength, and the silk robe and rune staff are immediately usable by the sage. Then, in Castletown Isis, defensive equipment is bought primarily for the hero and warrior. While in Castle Isis, the Meteorite armband is acquired, which gives its bearer double agility in battle, which is extremely useful. Both accessories, the Meteorite armband and the Hero's armband, find use for the rest of the run. Heading towards Portoga, the team picks up 2 steel whips for the Hero and the Thief, who will clean up group encounters efficiently. While walking towards the first Kandar fight through Champagne Tower, encounters are fought to get to an average of around level 5. The 2 aforementioned accessories will get swapped between the Hero and the Thief depending on context. During boss battles, the Meteorite armband for the Thief gives her agility some reliability and healing first per turn, but the Hero's armband gives her more attack power during random encounters. The Hero is vice versa, where he gets an attack boost from the Hero's armband during boss battles, but gets a more important speed boost during random encounters to speed up fights and cut down on enemy actions. Kandar is the first major boss fight of the game, featuring him and 3 henchmen. The henchmen are taken out immediately, then the focus is on Kandar. The strategy is to focus attacks on the henchmen, and usually 2 to 3 party members with 1 attack each can take one out. The mage will learn different spells depending on how lucky she was while leveling up, and she may have either upper or ice bolt spells or possibly both, or none. The first turn of battle is the scariest, and if the mage gets targeted 3 times and knocked out, the battle is usually a struggle, but still winnable. Even by himself, Kandar is a threat, as he can critically hit a party member almost always immediately knocking them out. As long as turn order is not terrible for the Thief, the fight is usually won. With Kandar 1 defeated, which is a required trigger for Kandar 2 to appear in his cave, the party heads to Baharata. Some magic shields are purchased here, valuable equipment for spell damage reduction. Kandar 2 is upcoming, but his fight is preceded by a 4x henchman fight, which is arguably as dangerous as the boss fight. They can cast the defense spell, but thanks to an exploit, any debuffs or buffs can be cancelled in combat by re-equipping any equipment on a character. This is used extensively during a few fights, but this fight is still dangerous. Kandar 2 comes next, which features 2 henchmen. This fight plays out somewhat similarly to his first fight, except the party has some more tools, including Mage potentially having the Increase spell. Otherwise, she buffs the party's defense, and Kandar is whittled down. Afterwards, some trips around the world are made to collect some resources, including the first of the 6 orbs, the red orb in the pirate's hideout. With the ship, the game opens up entirely, with the goal of collecting 6 orbs to awaken Ramya to access Baramos Castle. The player immediately prioritizes traveling the world to gain resources, both money and items, then prioritizes gaining levels and spells to support the team for the rest of the game. Garuna Tower has access to metal slimes, and the player spends a decent amount of time gaining levels here. The general technique is to confuse metal slimes and their allies with poison moth powders, a consumable item, and get the enemies to attack each other for high damage. During this time, the player levels the Thief to 20 and class changes them into a Sage, and then continues grinding the Mage to level 21 to get Bykill, which is a double attack spell. Bykill has a 50% learn rate, which is often a reset point in the run. Afterwards, the Mage is turned into a warrior who can deal and tank damage and use support spells. After the final party is created, the player heads to Lancel to get the blue orb, then to Donkey for the green orb, then heads to Samanosa to defeat Boss Troll. The Lamp of Darkness is acquired in Tadanki, giving the player the ability to set nighttime at command. This is useful for both some story triggers, and is also used to reset the threat levels of encounters, effectively reducing the encounter rate. Samanosa gives access to the shop with dragon shields, which are an upgrade to the magic shields bought earlier. A zombie killer is bought for the warrior and off to fight Boss Troll. Boss Troll starts on a scripted pattern, including using the defense spell. The strategy is to cast Stop spell, thereby changing his pattern, and then boost defense via the Increase spell from both Mage Warrior and the Sage. Boss Troll has a chance to critical an ally, and if the Sage dies, the fight is usually lost. Boss Troll is 30% susceptible to the Sap spell, which massively speeds up the fight. The Mage Warrior uses Bykill on the physical attackers, then casts Bykill on the boss, which sounds like a bad idea, but actually negates his ability to critically hit. With boosted defenses on the party, Boss Troll's damage is manageable, and the fight is then won by careful planning. Defeating Boss Troll gives the party the Change Rod, which is used immediately to access the Elven Village, which is only accessible during the short time the party has this key item. 2 Sleep Staves and Prayer Rings are obtained while here, both having immense value. Sleep Staves allow any party member to use them as an item for free cast of the sleep spell. Prayer Rings restore MP and can break upon use. A trade quest takes place, resulting in getting the Gaia Sword to plunge into the volcano to access the Necrogon, a treacherous area. Within the dungeon is the Thunder Sword, an incredible sword for the hero, later changing hands. The Sword Edge armor is also obtained here. The reward for finishing the journey is the Silver Orb. Afterwards, strides towards Orochi take place. Orochi is fought twice. The first encounter has slightly lower stats and can be put to sleep. The strategy is to try to land sap and surround spells with the Sage, while Mage Warrior by-kills the team. Everyone pivots for healing and primarily attack. The second fight is a little more dangerous, as Orochi 2 cannot be put to sleep. Both Orochis have strong breath attack, but Orochi 2 has a chance of using a weak breath attack. Party-wide damaging moves are challenging to keep up with, and double strong breath by Orochi 2 can be devastating. But usually the fight is stable and won by staying on top of healing well. The purple orb is rewarded after the fights. The final orb, the yellow orb, is accessible by the Merchant Town, which is progressed by some key internal checkpoints, and doing the run in order up until this point set the flags for the final stage of the town to appear. A merchant is recruited from the tavern and immediately deployed to build the town, then the yellow orb is retrieved. With 6 orbs, Ramia is awakened, and the player can access Baramos' castle. The castle has dangerous encounters, but thankfully encounters are cut short. The Tiptoe ability has been getting used since the thief learned it, but really shines during this part. This ability reduces the threat level of encounters substantially, and with all of the screen transitions in Baramos' castle, the threat level is often reset, and getting into encounters is fairly rare. Baramos is perhaps the most challenging encounter to execute in the run, and is a difficult boss fight at a low level. Baramos is susceptible to many status effects including Sap, Surround, Sleep, and Stop Spell, but is generally very dangerous. Having all characters survive the fight is important, since Baramos gives the player a lot of experience points upon defeat. After defeating Baramos and entering the Dark World, the player then collects the Stones of Sunlight and the Rain Staff as quickly as possible. Most runs collect the resources required to get the King Sword, a very strong weapon for the hero, but the very fastest runs of this category skips this. The route generally involves traveling to the town of Myra, also known as Cole, then travels to Rubus Tower, then collects the Rain Staff. Finally, the Rainbow Drop is created and onto Zoma's castle. The Dark World features many dangerous random encounters that the player has to decide how to handle. It's worth mentioning the small chance of encountering and defeating a liquid metal slime for high experience is possible along the way. Zoma's castle is a very dangerous dungeon, with many encounters that can either do high damage or use instant death spells. 3 Grand Titans are fought on the first floor, which generally showcases the primary strategy for the run at this point. Mage Warrior buffs the party with by-kill, Warrior is either attacking, tanking damage, or supporting with Sleep Staff, Hero is dealing the most significant damage, and Sage is supporting with buffs, debuffs, status effects, and healing spells. The boss rush at the end of Zoma's castle is a major endurance test, where the player has to be concerned about MP restorative items, revival options, and general survivability. King Hydra is first, which is usually not a huge threat. King Hydra uses medium fire breath and strong physicals, and any character getting hit by double physical in one turn is often in major trouble. Next is Barabros, a very dangerous fight. Barabros can go between 1 to 3 times per turn and has a nasty arsenal of attacks including Violent Flame Breath and Explodette. Barabros has huge defense, which is why landing a sap spell with the Sage is so critical, but Barabros only has 1100 HP, which is low at this point in the game. Successful fights hope to see less than 3 actions per turn. The third fight is Zombie Baramos, which is a boss that only physically attacks once or twice per turn. Zombie Baramos' physical damage output is enormous, but the team can cast Increase for the first few turns to boost defense, and then safely win the fight after buffing attack power with buy kill. Out of the whole boss rush, Zombie Baramos is perhaps the simplest fight. The final boss of this game is Zoma, a menacing threat. The first turn of the fight requires using the light orb with the Sage. Zoma has 4700 HP, attacks twice per turn, and has 4 actions. Violent Ice Breath to hit everyone for strong damage, Single Target Physical for huge focus damage, Blizzard Spell to hit everyone for medium damage, and Freezing Waves to reset all stat changes, including debuffs on Zoma. Winning the fight comes down to adequate resources with World Leaves for revival and Prayer Rings for MP restore, and having enough health on the team. It's worth noting that over the course of this game, that stat growths are effectively random with guide rails, but the player can have either very low or very high HP by the time they reach this fight. A successful Zoma fight allows the player to buff attack power with buy kill on the hero efficiently and capitalize upon damage during short stretches. When Zoma uses Freezing Waves, all buffs are lost, but the player gets a chance to recover HP during this time. Finally, after a long battle, Zoma goes down and the credits sequence begins. Dragon Warrior 4, the final NES game in the series, takes place over a series of chapters for each of the main characters. Chapter 1 follows Ragnar around with his acquired friend Healy in the Berland area, who seek to rescue the missing children. Elena, Christo, and Bray appear in Chapter 2 and take down enemies while learning about the formidable force Necrosaro. Chapter 3 stars Talon on his journey to become the greatest arms dealer and find the most powerful and treasured equipment in the world. In Chapter 4, Nara and Mara seek revenge for their father by chasing Balzac down, only to realize a deeper plot unfurling. Finally, Chapter 5 features the hero in their teenage life and learn about Sorrow's grand plans to destroy the prophesized hero and become the ruler of mankind. The hero narrowly survives and seeks out allies from the first few chapters. After traveling the world, recruiting party members, getting a ship and some keys, the hero makes their way towards Esturk, the great ancient evil, and defeats them. Sorrow, the main antagonist, soon gains hold of the Armlet of Transmutation and descends to the Dark World. The hero's party chases them, defeating 4 guardians along the way, including the evil Radamvice who pushed Sorrow over the edge due to his tragic past. The party then confronts Necrosaro and defeats them. This game features 8 main characters, all with defined roles, and gives the player the ability to choose who they'd like to participate in battles. Notably, the speedrun being showcased is the NES version, which does not allow for direct control of party members in the final chapter. This important mechanic influences speedrun strategy heavily, as a deep understanding of the game's AI system is required to attempt to influence the best outcomes. This game is also the first chronological introduction of the small medal system, where collectible medals can be retrieved for rewards from the Medal King. The game also introduces the wagon, and thus introduces a commonplace Dragon Quest mechanic of actively swapping party members in and out of battles during battles. The speedrun starts in Chapter 1 with Ragnar. After collecting some basic defensive gear, walking around on the world map above Berlin Castle advances to nighttime without the threat of encounters. Some cutscenes take place in Izmit, then Ragnar unequips gear and death warps back to Berlin. No battles are fought, and Healy is recruited and the flying shoes are obtained. Straight into Lock Tower, Ragnar gets the Sword of Malice in the dungeon and grinds to level 6. Sorrow's Shadow is the first boss, who comes with a Giant Eyeball cohort. Giant Eyeball will enrage under 33% health, so Ragnar simply attacks until it goes down and hopes not to get critically hit. The boss itself uses Blaze and Fireball spells, physical attack, and Fire Breath, and must be carefully fought. Healy is very fragile, but critical to the fight's success. The fight is very reset heavy, but some good luck and the party can squeeze by and finish Chapter 1. Chapter 2 starts with Elena, and soon Christo and Bray join after escaping Santine Castle. An early grind takes place to prepare for the Chameleon humanoid fight. Bray can use Sap on the main boss and Ice Bolt on the Rabid Hounds, while Christo heals and Elena attacks. The boss can put people to sleep with its attack, which can be problematic. Afterwards, some equipment shopping in Fëanor, then off to get the Golden Bracelet and Death Warp afterwards. Battles are not fought for a while and are just ran away from. Following the quests, The Birdsong Tower is next, which is much more dangerous with some of its encounters. With Bray usually being knocked out, a technique called coffin blocking becomes very important to the run and is used frequently from here on out. Any character in the very back of the party is protected from most physical attacks if a dead character is ahead of them. In this part of the game, this helps Elena tank damage and Christo can focus on healing. Finally, after accessing Endor, the goal is to get to level 11, and the fastest strategy is to fight metal slimes, which have a spawn rate of about 10%. A safer non-metal slime grind with grizzly sabers in Birdsong Tower is feasible, but a little bit slower. The metal slime grind is dangerous at low levels, but has huge time benefits. After level 11, Elena should have enough strength for the final gauntlet, and preparations for the tournament are made, including getting an iron claw and some herbs. The tournament has 5 participants to take down, and healing must be managed well. Hun goes down easily, and Rorik and Vivian have some HP management techniques. Samson has high defense, and Elena's strength stat comes into play, and a lucky critical hit massively helps. Finally, Lingwar is a 25% guessing game to target the right enemy 3 times. If Elena has enough healing and gets lucky enough, then the chapter closes out. Tulun's the star of Chapter 3, which is a massive change of pace, and is largely a resource and numbers management chapter. Generally efficient play cleans up the early part of the chapter, and the iron safe is skipped. The Bon Malmo Armory lets Tulun sell gear for a profit, notably the full plate for over 2,700 gold right now. Some gear is bought, and the Silver Statuette Cave is tackled early to get access to funds. Back in Bon Malmo, over 35,000 gold is earned by buying and reselling iron aprons repeatedly. With this money, Tulun can buy his own shop. The next goal is to afford 6 broadswords and 6 iron armors, and now half-plates are bought and resold to fulfill this goal. Tulun can buy some extra gear that will stay in his inventory for Chapter 5, and finally the chapter closes out. Chapter 4 begins with Nara and Mara traveling towards Keeves. Defensive gear is bought, and Orin is recruited in West Keeves Cave, and the Sphere of Silence is retrieved as well. The goal is to get strong enough to survive the Balzac fight, but the fight can be done at a low level. In Iktempto Mine, the party narrowly survives and gets the gunpowder jar, then makes their way towards Kelion Castle and fights Balzac. Balzac is susceptible to the Sphere of Silence and the Sap spell and regenerates HP. The coffin blocking technique allows Orin to soak damage primarily. Afterwards, Kelion defeats the team, Orin leaves the party, and the sisters take a ship ride to finish the chapter. At last, Chapter 5 begins. Hero collects some early items from their starting village in the Woodsman's Hut, meets up with Nara and Mara in Endor, then head to the Silver Statuette Cave to get a broadsword and half-plate armor for the hero. Making sure Hero is adequately geared up, the Cave of Betrayal has 2 fights for the hero by himself, both of which are reasonable when played cautiously. Crossing the desert and learning of a way to get a ship, the party heads to the lighthouse. Lighthouse Bengal is a problematic fight at the top, as its 2 minions can cast both Fireball and Fire Breath. Once again, Chapter 5 allies cannot be directly controlled, and the AI system will choose commands based on one of 6 styles chosen by the player. The Expel spell can instantly remove the Flamers at around 40% success rate, and Nara can help with the Sleep spell as well. If the party resources are good, Bengal by itself is fairly manageable. A quick visit to the Petequia Cave is made to save Christo. Elena, Christo, and Bray are recruited, and small medals begin getting retrieved now, including visiting Seaside Village for one of them. Stancia is visited for a story trigger, then Mambaraba is visited to have Panin join, who is a temporary ally that will get some usage in battle. Then the magic key is retrieved now. Fights start becoming more dangerous, and opportunities to swap party members in and out of the wagon become important to take advantage of. The Metal King is visited to get a Sword of Miracles for Christo and some Stabs of Punishment. Rosaville is visited to get the Sword of Lethargy, an incredibly important sword that can put enemies to sleep on physical attack. After traveling the world and gearing up the party, it's finally time for a boss fight, Kelion. Hero's Sword of Lethargy can put him to sleep, and the Staff of Punishment can deal decent damage. Panin also comes equipped with a Sword of Lethargy, and Elena and Christo do their standard attack and healing rolls respectively. Elena has a Staff of Punishment, and Christo has a Sword of Miracles. Kilian is a threat when he's awake, but rarely is. Ragnar joins afterwards. With all party members, the most important party members are Hero, Ragnar, Christo, Elena, and Bray, and the others are rarely used. Unlike in future versions of this game, Tulun does not get any supporting skills or spells such as the encounter reducing skill Tiptoe. Temporary NPCs that join will be helpful too, depending on the context. Next up is the Balzac 2 fight, which is very similar to Kilian except that Balzac is slower than the team. Balzac regenerates HP in this fight, but otherwise putting him to sleep is the general strategy. The Magma Staff is retrieved afterwards. The goal of this segment is to get the 4 pieces of Zenithian equipment. The Gardenburg area is accessible with the Magma Staff, and Bakor is the next boss fight. Stop Spell is the crux of winning this fight, and if it fails too often to land, then Bakor starts casting both Snowstorm and Increase and can quickly become a huge problem. But once he is Stop Spelled, Christo can cast Increase and the party becomes safe. The party gets the Zenithian shield afterwards. A trip back to Rosaville for some Stiletto earrings for Elena and the Dragon Mail for Ragnar. Stiletto earrings have low attack power but allow Elena to attack twice, which gives her more opportunities to critically attack, and Elena has a higher chance to crit than other characters. Off to the Colossus, and importantly grabbing the Demon Hammer in the dungeon and the Aeolus Shield in Dire Palace. The Royal Crypt holds the Staff of Transform, required for the story progression, but the party will stay here and grind somewhere between 8 to 10 metal babbles for a large level gain. Hero uses the Demon Hammer for a chance to critically hit or miss. The Dragonets in this area are 100% susceptible to Expel, and other enemies including Hembalba, Bembombar, and Tyrannobots are susceptible to the Aeolus Shield at an 83% success rate. After much grinding, the hero learns Zap, Christo learns Vivify, and potentially the Heal All spell. Afterwards, the Zenithian helmet is retrieved from Stancia, and the Zenithian armor is retrieved from the Shrine of Breaking Waves north of the Metal King. Older routes used to collect a few more small medals to get the Hat of Happiness to restore MP on walking, but is usually skipped. S-Turk is the next major boss, and due to the proper leveling from the Metal Babble grind, the team can handle the fight. S-Turk has 2 actions per turn and acts on a cycle including Strong Ice Breath, Physical Attack, Charge Up, Physical Attack, Freezing Waves, and Physical Attack. While asleep, S-Turk uses an Eerie Light attack to hit the whole party. He generates 50 HP per turn. The boss goes to sleep from the Sword of Lethargy, but there's a balance of how to handle the fight because of how S-Turk attacks while he's asleep with the Eerie Light skill. Christo is managed via AI heavily to make sure he heals appropriately. The next segments involve climbing the World Tree to get the balloon with the gas canister. The Zenithian sword is retrieved at the top, along with recruiting Lucia. The Zenithian sword can be optionally powered up by Master Dragon to get the Freezing Waves effect on use. Entering the Gottside area, Baron's Horn is retrieved for the wagon access to the final dungeon, a necessity for the final boss. The descent into the Dark World is made through the final cave. There is some EXP management to make sure that Bray gets a level, so some encounters are fought. In the Dark World, the 4 Guardians are fought. Infernus Shadow is fought first, the most dangerous, with an array of attacks, but as usual can be put to sleep. The Sword of Decimation can lower defense on enemies, which will get much use from here on. Infernus Shadow has a large array of damaging attacks, but can be stop-spelled. Next up is Giga Demon, who has a large HP pool and physical attacks, and can decrease incoming damage by 75% even while it's asleep. Andorug is a 3-enemy fight, but is susceptible to both defeat and the Aeolus Shield to immediately defeat them with some luck. Finally, Radamvice guards the last barrier, who comes with Demi-Ghouls. Demi-Ghouls can be expelled, and Radamvice fights with spells. The Fen spell can be used here with some safety to disallow any targeted ally from spells having any effect on them. Radamvice resists magic spells himself, so straight physicals clean up the fight. One more Sword of Lethargy is purchased for Ragnar. Final inventorying is done to make sure Hero has a Sword of Lethargy equipped and the Sword of Decimation as a usable item, and the party is set to Ragnar, Elena, Hero, and Christo, while Bray and Lucia will support occasionally in the upcoming fight. The walk in Necrosaurus Castle has some dangerous enemies, but resources are managed tightly for the upcoming boss fight. Necrosaro is a 7-phase fight involving a lot of strategic positioning and party maintenance. Forms 1 and 2 start off with physical attacks only, giving Christo a chance to buff defense, Bray casting By-Kill, and the rest of the party can deal damage. Fence spell is cast on Necrosaro, and the strategy is to skip reducing defense during the early parts of the fight. Phase 3 features some spells and skills, including Instant Death Beat spell and party-wide Sleep Breath, but otherwise features low damage output. Throughout the whole fight, Elena, Ragnar, and the hero are dishing out damage, while Hero sometimes pivots to heal. Phase 4 enters the green phase and operates on a fixed cycle where his third action is freezing waves, and then every 6 turns after will be another freezing waves. Iron Eyes is used early on to avoid waves, but he can be put to sleep, resulting in a more feasibly aggressive strategy. Phases 4 through 6 operate somewhat similarly, with increasing attack and defensive power per phase. A strategy is used to try to stop Elena from dealing the final blow between phases, and have either Ragnar or the hero land the blow, because they have a chance of landing the sleep effect on their attack after the phase switches. The sap effect from the Sword of Decimation also has a higher chance of landing during phases 4 through 6 than the others. Keeping HP high, phase 6 ends with more dedicated physical attacks. Phase 7 is the final phase, and by far the most dangerous. Necrosaro has access to freezing waves, physical attack, violent, fire, and ice breath attacks. He goes twice per turn and regenerates a large 100 HP per turn. As usual, the boss going to sleep is a massive benefit for the team. An interesting quirk of the AI system is exploited here, where Iron Eyes is cast multiple times to pass turns so that Ragnar learns that he should attack instead of using the Sword of Lethargy as an item for the Sleep More spell. Since turns in battle help AI party members learn about resistances. No reservations are made, and any amount of scrap damage to whittle down the boss is valuable. Elena's ability to crit, and Ragnar and the hero's consistent damage while putting the boss to sleep eventually wear him down, and the battle is won. A balloon trip around the world commences, then the hero rejoices with his lost friend, and the game closes out.
Dragon Quest V is a game that is split into 3 main story arcs, including childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, with adulthood sometimes being referred to as late adolescence. After a short scene showing the main character's birth in a castle, the game skips forward 6 years to your childhood. During this time, you are living out of a small village with your father Papas, who is searching for your mother as well as the legendary hero. Here, you meet Bianca, becoming friends and solving the mystery of a haunted house in order to receive a gold orb and rescue the saber cub Barango. With Barango, you then proceed to help the fairies that can only be seen by children, returning the seasons to a fairy kingdom that is beset by an endless winter. After saving the fairy kingdom, you travel to Reinhardt in search of information and are introduced to the young Prince Henry, who is promptly kidnapped. Papas follows him into the ancient ruins, followed by you and Barango. You rescue Prince Henry, but there is an ambush waiting by the evil mage Gemma and his cronies, Jami and Gons. While Papas can defeat the cronies, Gemma threatens your life, and Papas allows himself to fall in battle. In return, Gemma does not kill you, but instead takes you and Henry to become slaves to help him construct a great temple. After a 10-year time jump, you and Henry escape slavery, and you are soon given the opportunity to purchase a wagon. This unlocks one of the core features of this game, monster recruitment. When defeating an enemy in battle, there is a chance for them to join your party, and they can level up and fight alongside you. In addition, the wagon allows you to swap party members during many battles during the game. After saving Reinhardt from an imposter queen, with Henry taking the throne, you wander the world searching for any clues to your parents' history, the legendary hero, and the legendary Zenithian equipment. Arriving in the town of Cerebona, the rich man Ludman is holding a competition. Whomever can retrieve the fire ring and water ring can marry his daughter Flora. After retrieving the fire ring from the nearby volcano, you encounter your childhood friend, Bianca, who helps you obtain the water ring. Bringing them to Ludman, you then have the opportunity to marry either Flora or Bianca. Afterwards, you and your chosen wife head off towards Grandvania, where your father Papas was king. Along the way, your wife falls ill, and upon arriving in Grandvania, you discover that she is pregnant. You complete a traditional trial, retrieving a medallion in order to become king, and defeating the thief Kandar along the way. Upon returning to Grandvania, your wife gives birth, and then, during the celebrations, she gets kidnapped. Attempting to rescue your wife, you travel to the Demon Tower and confront Jami, one of Gemma's cronies from the childhood confrontation in the ruins. You defeat Jami, but with the last of his energy, he turns you and your wife into stone statues. After being turned into statues, these statues are auctioned off, and 8 years goes by. Eventually, your children and Sancho, who was a friend of your father, find your statue and dispel the magical effect. Recovering your normal form, you set off in search of your wife. Additionally, you discover that your son is the true legendary hero due to his ability to equip the Zenithian sword. While searching for your wife, you find the sunken castle of Zenithia, and, with the help of fairy magic, turn the castle to its flying state. You then confront Gons and Gemma in order to return the Zenithian Master Dragon to his true form. Master Dragon helps you continue to the Great Temple, where you find your wife's statue. Defeating Ivel and retrieving the Ring of Life returns your wife to her true form as well. During this time, the evil monster Bjorn awakens after being sealed away for many years in a magical pot, watched over by Ludmund's family. Defeating him rewards you with the final key. Using this final key, as well as the 3 rings you have obtained, fire, water, and life, you are able to enter the Dark World. After a quick stop at the town of Johanna, you enter the Evil Mountain. Here you discover the ghost of your mother Martha at long last. Continuing through the mountain, you finally face off against the evil Miradrus, the true mastermind behind the challenges you have been facing throughout the game. Upon defeating Miradrus, you bring peace to the land, and there are some final scenes with the towns you have helped throughout the game. From a speedrun perspective, each generation has some unique considerations, and the game is loaded with RNG that runners should prepare for. As a child, you begin by diving into the Santa Rosa Cave, collecting some early experience and equipment to sell for money. Money is scarce in the early game and often dictated by random encounters, especially those fought in the overworld with Papas. After walking to El Capa, you load up on medical herbs and purchase a boomerang. The boomerang is a strong weapon and hits all enemies in the battle. Using these resources, you fight your way through the Haunted Lenoir Castle. The hero and Bianca should reach level 6, allowing you to defeat the boss ghost. Heading off to the fairy world with Barango the Saber Cub and Bella the Fairy, you fight through the dwarf cave to learn how to open locks, allowing you to face off against Zaire and the Ice Queen. The Ice Queen has a specific ability rotation, and knowing this pattern is the key to defeating her quickly and reliably. From here, the rest of the chapter is fairly straightforward. Overworld encounters on the way to Reinhardt net you some extra cash, allowing you to buy defensive equipment for the walk through the ancient ruins, ending the childhood segment. After escaping from slavery at the start of adolescence, you are able to purchase the wagon, required for monster recruitment. Additionally, you can afford to purchase a chain cross, which is a strong whip-type weapon. From Oracleberry, you want to start fighting enemies. Henry will need some experience to learn the defense spell before the imposter boss, but more importantly, there are some monsters you need to recruit. These monsters are as follows. 1. Slalin, the blue slime. Slalin is very easy to recruit and has excellent utility. Slalin will learn the following spells: Expel, Increase, Defense, and Chaos. Expel will be used for handling random encounters throughout the entire game. Increase will buff your party's defensive power, and Defense will lower the enemy's defensive power. Finally, Chaos will be used during the final boss fight. Second, this is the big one, Pierre the Slime Knight. Slime Knight is an excellent monster as it can equip strong weapons and armor, learns valuable healing magic, has good strength and hit points, and has some innate spell and breath resistance. This makes him very tanky and also your primary damage dealer for most of the run. However, Slime Knight is only a 25% recruitment chance, and it can take a number of encounters for them to show up, making it an extreme reset point if aiming for a very fast time. Third, any extra monster, most commonly a brownie. This monster's only real purpose is to store items since Dragon Quest V does not provide you with a bag. After recruiting and gearing up Pierre, sneaking through the underground entrance to Reinhardt Castle, and then retrieving the Mirror of Ra from the Tower of God, you are able to defeat the imposter. The imposter is on a fixed pattern and is typically a straightforward fight. Henry then leaves your party, leaving you to wander for yourself. At this point, the normal strategy is to fight through the Santa Rosa Cave. This provides the opportunity for some quick levels by defeating metal slimes and will also reward you with the Zenithian Sword. The sword has the useful effect of removing enemy buffs and debuffs in combat, though it has minimal use as a weapon since it cannot be equipped by the hero or Pierre. For this reason, it is worth noting that the very fastest runs of the game completely skip this sword. This makes the rest of Gen 2 more challenging and makes late game bosses slower and more difficult, but it saves the significant time investment required to retrieve the sword. From here, you take a boat to the western continent and complete a small side quest to learn the return spell, allowing you to quickly warp to towns throughout the game. You then proceed on to Cerebona, learning about Ludman's challenge, which will allow you to marry his daughter Flora. The first part of the challenge is retrieving the fire ring. This requires venturing through the volcano, an area full of very dangerous monsters. If you can reach the end of the volcano, Pierre can solo the 3 lava gaijin that are guarding the ring, needing only an upper cast from hero to boost his defense. The second part of the challenge is to travel to the waterfall cave and retrieve the water ring. Metal slimes are not uncommon here for some extra experience, but there is no boss or similar obstacle to retrieving this ring. Upon bringing both rings to Ludman, you have a choice. Do you marry Flora or Bianca? While using Bianca can be viable, Flora is a much safer choice and provides a number of benefits. Flora starts with more valuable equipment, automatically revives on death throughout Gen 2, and allows you to receive a free water flying clothes on the way to Chizod. After completing some basic plot triggers to get married, Ludman allows you to take the Zenithian Shield, an item which can apply the bounce effect in combat, and also rewards you with a boat. While Dragon Quest RTA often sees a world tour once obtaining the boat, this is not the case in Dragon Quest V. Sailing only to Ned's Inn, you continue on the path to Chizod, and then to Granvania. Once in Granvania, some critical items are available that will be used throughout the run. Fighter Hair. This is a consumable item which applies the by-kill effect, greatly increasing the target's damage. Many of these will be purchased at the item shop. Second, Tempest Shields. These shields offer good defensive properties and also have an expel effect when used in combat, which is very useful for clearing random encounters. Third, Hat of Happiness and the Wizard Ring. These are found in chests in a hidden room in the castle. The hat will restore the wearer's MP while walking, and the ring can be used as an item to restore MP. Resources are tight in many dungeons, and these items are critical to progressing quickly. After equipping up in Granvania, you take a quick trip to the Cave of Trials, where you defeat Kandar and retrieve the token to become king. After becoming king of Granvania, your wife is kidnapped and you follow to the Demon Tower. The Demon Tower has a number of hazards and forced encounters to test your resources. At the top of the tower, you face off against Orc level 20, Chimera level 35, and finally Jami. This trio is usually not very difficult, but your resources will be low from the challenges of the tower. In the Jami fight, Hero receives a full HP and MP recovery when Jami's barrier is lowered. After the fight, you and your wife are turned to stone. After a long, roughly 6-minute story scene, the hero is recovered and Gen 3 begins. At the start of Gen 3, you are joined by Sancho and your 2 children. Sancho and the daughter are critical to the run, while the son, who is the true legendary hero, is only used for a single fight. Your first task is to obtain some useful items. A quick trip to Reinhardt nets you the demon armor for Sancho. Sailing through the sea cave to the town of Elhaven rewards you with the magic carpet and the magic key. The return to Granvania allows for more shopping and the retrieval of the meteorite armband, an accessory which doubles a character's agility. Flying to Zenithian Tower, you retrieve the magma staff used to open Tarako Mine. In the mine, you retrieve another critical item, the Bless Staff. This staff uses the Heal More effect in combat and will be a primary source of healing for most of Gen 3. You also find a Strange Man Pusan and a tunnel to Zenithia sunken beneath the sea. Traveling to the Forest of Illusion, you obtain yet another critical item, the Fairy Sword, which uses the upper spell on the user. This is critical for the low HP daughter to survive against strong enemies. Using the power of the fairies, you are able to restore Zenithian Castle, giving you overworld flight. Using the castle's flight, you continue on to the Tower of Bobel. This is a grueling dungeon full of scary enemies. Utilizing all of your resources, you first defeat Gons and then face off against Gemma in the basement. Gemma has the powerful Blazemo spell, a fire breath attack, and the ability to paralyze your entire team. This fight hinges on which characters get hit with paralysis, as you have limited recovery from this status effect. Defeating these two bosses in the tower allows you to retrieve the dragon eyes needed to enter the tower's basement. Here you recover the dragon staff and dragon orb, which allows Poussin to return to his true form as the Master Dragon. Using the flight of the Master Dragon, you travel to the Great Temple. After a battle with the Gigantes Ramada, you discover the statue of your wife. Ramada has powerful area of effect abilities, but low hit points, so this fight should end quickly. You then must dive through the long, difficult temple to face off against Eivel at the bottom and obtain the Ring of Life. Eivel himself is on a fixed rotation and poses no real threat if played correctly, assuming the necessary party members survive the walk through the temple. By now, the daughter also has the By-Kill spell, allowing you to inflict heavy damage. Retrieving the Ring of Life and restoring your wife, there is one final task before entering the Dark World. The evil Bjorn, long trapped in a pot watched by Ludmann's family, is free. Bjorn himself is a fairly straightforward fight. After buffing up with Fighter Hair and the hero's upper spell, Sancho and Pierre deal big damage, with Pierre using the Heal All spell as needed. After defeating Bjorn, you are rewarded with the final key. Taking the 3 rings, Fire, Water, and Life, to the Shrine in the Sea Cave, you are able to enter the Dark World. Here you are given the Sage's Stone, an item which heals the entire party in combat. From this point, Sancho with the stone becomes your primary healer. After making a quick stop in the town of Johanna, your final opportunity to shop and heal up, you continue on to the Evil Mountain. While the Evil Mountain is a fairly long dungeon, proper encounter handling will allow you to survive with a high probability. In this dungeon, you obtain a couple of final items, including the powerful Echo Hat. This causes the wearer's spell to cast twice. This doubles the effect of Slalin's defensive, debuffs, and buffs, and also raises the chance of expelling enemies. At the end of the Evil Mountain, there is a simple battle against 2 Hell Battlers, and then you prepare for the final boss, Miradris. Miradris has 2 phases. The first phase is on a fixed 3-turn rotation, and he will summon monsters during the fight to help. Ideally, he will summon killer clowns. These clowns can be confused by Slalin's Chaos spell and contribute greatly to your damage. If Miradris summons killer machines instead, they must be expelled away. Repeated killer machine summons can be difficult to overcome. After the first phase, Miradris transforms into a large demon. Phase 2 always has 4,500 hit points and begins the fight with the bounce effect active. However, this phase chooses from one of 3 different attack patterns, generally referred to as weak, medium, and strong patterns. Each pattern has a 6 ability fixed rotation. The weak pattern takes only 1 action per turn and is therefore both the most predictable and also the fastest pattern, as he uses his self-heal the least often. The medium pattern takes 1 to 2 actions per turn, which means safer play is needed and more self-healing slows down the fight. The strong pattern also takes 1 to 2 actions per turn, however one of his actions is the bounce spell, which he will not recast if active, therefore it is effectively a 5-turn rotation, making it by far the most challenging and slowest pattern. Regardless of the pattern, the basic strategy is the same. Remove his bounce effect to lower his defense, then attack with Pierre, spam the Sage's Stone with Sancho, and By-Kill or spot heal with the daughter as needed. In the fastest runs that skip the Zenithian Sword, you are generally unable to lower Miradris II's defense, making the fight much slower and riskier. After defeating Miradris, you take a victory tour around the world before watching the final credits roll.
Dragon Quest VI starts out with the party having an unsuccessful attempt at defeating Mudo, one of the game's main dread fiends. The hero gets thrown into the dream world without a clear understanding of what happened. The player then learns about the other world and proceeds to learn more about the 2 worlds and how Mudo is terrorizing both. They then travel between worlds, facing a few bosses along the way. The team starts to build out, and by the time the player reaches Mudo, the characters Hassan, Mireyu, Barbara, and Chamorro have joined. Mudo is a fearsome threat, and after the battle, the world opens up via access to a ship. At this point, Dharma Castle in the Dream World is available for characters to change classes, which is a core element of customizing the team. The game continues to gradually open up by defeating the rest of the Dread Fiends, which are the main generals of Deathmore, the final boss. Some other bosses and goals are along the way, and the player gets access to a few vehicles including the floating island, the bed, and the magic carpet. As the game opens up, more places that were sealed by the Dread Fiends become available, such as the Metal King's Castle to trade in rewards, and Calberona, which houses the great spell Medante for Barbara. The goal later becomes to collect the legendary pieces of equipment to reach Castle Zenithia, guarded by the last Dread Fiend of the real and dream worlds, Duran. Soon afterwards, the team proceeds to the Dark World, where Deathmore lies. After traveling to a few towns in the Dark World and fighting some more bosses, the player finally confronts Deathmore at the end of his castle in a long and grueling 3-phase fight. The speedrun is a primarily linear game experience up until accessing the Watergate key in the bed, which is about halfway through, but many routing choices about character classes, equipment, and lineup are crucial. Early on, basic preparations are made for the first few bosses. Bloody Paw is the first major boss, who is fought at a low level. The Star Fragment is an item that can confuse the boss 50% of the time, and the boss can run from battle at around a 6% chance per turn after. Afterwards, progress towards fighting Mudo is linear and straightforward. Optimally, one Metal Slime is fought on the way to Horror Beast in the Cave of Amoru, but the player can fight regular encounters if Metal Slimes don't appear. The goal is level 7 on the hero to learn the Sap spell. The next two bosses, Horror Beast and the 3 poison zombies in Raw Mirror Tower, are relatively easy fights when prepared. Mudo is fought 3 times in the game, and his final encounter is easily the largest threat in the game besides the final boss. The first fight in the Dream World is a relatively basic fight, utilizing a combination of buffs, debuffs, and situational awareness. To prepare for the second and third Mudo fights, which are back-to-back, the Fire Claw is obtained from Mudo's castle and used as an item as the primary source of damage. Most routes complete a short side quest to get enough money to afford the Spirit Armor, a fantastic piece of equipment that reduces spell damage, but the very fastest completion times skip this. Mudo 2 is a fight featuring many summoned enemy cohorts, but is otherwise a fairly simple fight. Mudo 3, fought immediately after, is the early game's most challenging boss. Mudo 3 features 1 to 2 actions per turn, and has huge variance in damage output. He can do as little as 1 physical attack per turn, or can do 2 full party damaging attacks for 80 plus combined damage in 1 turn. Successful fights require apt use of the Genkin to heal, and Fire Claw for damage, and almost always come down to Hiro and Hassan barely scraping by. After the fight, the game changes pace considerably. Dharma Castle is available for changing jobs, but the choice is made for whether or not to get Amos, a optional character from Monstora. Amos is an important party character who comes with good gear and high HP, fitting a valuable damage-dealing role for the next few boss fights, so he is obtained. Amos is recruited immediately, so he can join in changing classes with the rest of the party. Class changes occur shortly after. Class changing has overall limited use in this run, but important skills are learned right away. The hero and Hassan become clerics to learn the upper spell, then become warriors afterwards. Malayu becomes a mage for 1 battle to learn Blazemore, then trains as a fighter for Wind Beast and Leg Sweep skills. Barbara is a jester to learn the whistle ability, then becomes a cleric to learn heal and upper. Chamorro trains as a thief to learn the tiptoe ability to reduce encounters, and Amos trains as a warrior to learn power up and double-edged slash. A quick class level grind takes place in early parts of the game where battles are valid due to the party's overall low level, then this type of grinding does not occur for the rest of the game. The next phase of the game largely consists of progressing through the game and taking out bosses immediately. The Arc Bolt sequence showcases the primary damage dealing strategy for the next few bosses. Amos and Hassan use power up into double-edged slash. Hassan will use Spirit Punch when possible, but not all enemies are susceptible. Brass is the final encounter at Arc Bolt, and use of upper spell on Amos and Hassan is required to scrape by in the fight. Jamarus is the next Dread Fiend, an encounter taking place in the Calcado segment. Jamarus 2 is susceptible to Spirit Punch, and the fight is relatively tame. Jamarus can go twice per turn, but with the use of the upper spell, his damage can be mitigated. Holstock sequence is next, and the 3 trials are all unique. Malayu has innate resistance to Chaos status effect, and the first trial primarily uses Chaos Dance only, so solo Malayu is used to easily clear the fight. Second and third trials are tests of attrition, where the party does not deal a lot of damage at this point in the game, and both fights are fairly long. Third Trial uses defense every turn, and the exploit to reset defense buffs in battle, as seen in the Dragon Quest III Super Famicom run, is used here to keep the party's defense at normal levels. The party proceeds to get the magic key, the bed, then head toward Phone Castle to fight Miralgo. A large part of the speedrun route of this game is picking up small medals along the way. A total of 70 medals are obtained in most routes, though the fastest runs pick up only 60. The first set of rewards come from the Medal King at 30 medals to include a Ruby of Power accessory and a Platinum Sword. Miralgo's fight is either a potentially easy or very dangerous fight. Every other turn he will cast Bounce on himself, and the strategy is to use the Expel spell to remove his barrier, forcing him to cast it again. On the other turn, he can summon an enemy cohort, use a physical attack, cast Blazemore, or cast Firebolt. Firebolt is easily the most dangerous, as it's an area all attack. This fight showcases using the tactics command to have Amos and Hassan auto-target either Miralgo or the enemy cohort if they are summoned. Mileo and Hero continue to play support. The aforementioned Watergate key is obtained afterwards, which opens the world for exploration. The player begins to collect the 4 legendary pieces of equipment to access Zenithia. The underwater harp is obtained first, leading to the final key, then Sufita's shield, the first of 4 pieces of equipment. A few class changes take place. Amos turns into a fighter for the leg sweep skill, and Barbara and Chamorro become classless to boost their stats. 40 small medals give the Sword of Miracles from the Medal King, which is part of a setup for Hassan to become a self-sustaining damage-dealing machine. This sword heals 1/4 of damage dealt back to Hassan. More small medals and some other items are obtained along the way, including a meteorite armband and demon armor for Amos, a power shield for Hassan, and a visit to Poseidon's lair for the echoing staff to sell later, among other visits. The party then proceeds towards Grakos, and only Hero and Hassan are brought to the fight. Hero's Sufita shield resists ice damage, and Hassan can easily stay alive with the Miracle Sword. Grakos uses physical attacks and ice group damage, and is susceptible to Spirit Punch. Because the Hero and Hassan learned Upper a long time ago, they can buff themselves, and Hassan can deal damage while Hero heals. 2 party members may seem suboptimal, but turns are very fast with less characters, and it generally results in both a safe and fast fight for menuing. Next, the Longa Deseo events are mostly cleared, then the party wins the beautiful carpet from the 3rd beauty contest. Slower routes of this game can return here to get the Sage's Stone for a 15-minute investment. Calberona is visited to get the Medante spell and to upgrade the carpet to fly. The armor of Orgo is acquired next with the magical carpet. The party proceeds to the Lifecod area in the real world, which features a burning town segment with many encounters before the boss. The strategy is to efficiently either stun or slightly damage enemies with the Hero, Hassan, and Amos. Then Barbara uses Medante on each fight for large magical damage. A cleric in the village will fully recover HP and MP for the team during this segment. Importantly, the servant boss here is a significantly easier fight when fusing with the Hero before the battle, but is usually a 3-turn fight. This segment rewards the Helma Save Us after cutscenes in Radok. Finally, the Sword of Ramius is acquired from Longa Deseo. 60 small medals are turned in to receive the Mystic Armor, an incredible armor that heals 40 to 50 HP per turn for Hassan. The party proceeds towards accessing Zenithia Castle. The first boss is Hellcloud, which uses physical attacks and Inframost, a strong wind spell. The hero helps with physical damage with his sword, and the Sword of Ramius can be used to cast the Bykill spell, an incredible tool for the rest of the run. Importantly, Amos has the Meteorite Armband and Demon Armor, which allows him to either prioritize going first or last in battle by equipping the Armband for double speed, which almost always allows him to go first, or the Demon Armor, which guarantees that he goes last. Turn order in Dragon Quest is often very challenging to deal with, and this setup is incredibly important for consistent gameplay and execution. Hellclad is taken down with Sap and large damage from Spirit Punch or Flying Knee from Hassan. The next segment is a gauntlet of 3 fights. The first fight against Killing Machine Mark II and Land Armor utilizes a rare strategy of Hassan using the Protect skill to absorb all incoming damage, while the others buff Hassan. The setup is to confuse the Land Armor so that it can't protect the Killing Machine, then Barbara uses Medante. Hero becomes the primary damage dealer for this gauntlet. Terry comes next and is generally an easy fight. Terry's most dangerous attack is using the Sword of Thunder, which does about 60 to 80 damage to everyone. Every other attack he deals is easy to deal with, since physical damage is generally easy to mitigate. Duran is the final fight here, and once again Hassan uses Protect to absorb incoming damage. The strategy is to have Hassan use Protect, Barbara casts Upper every turn on Hassan, Hero deals damage, and Amos heals. Hero can use Double-Edged Slash to deal extra damage, but Amos has to prioritize healing Hassan or the hero to keep up. Duran can use a litany of moves, including Freezing Waves to cancel all debuffs, but Barbara using Upper every turn can help Hassan stay alive and protect the party. The fight is mostly safe but has tricky positioning to make sure no one dies, and if anyone does die in the fight, it becomes instantly extremely scary. Terry joins the party, and the player climbs Zenithia Tower to obtain Pegasus. The fight here is relatively simple. Hassan protects on turn 1 while Barbara uses Medante, then the party cleans up the fight by defeating Hell Genie in a few turns. Afterwards, now that Terry is available, the player can visit Arkbolt to recruit Drango, also known as Lizzie, the extremely powerful physical ally. Drango has incredible large HP pools and attack. Terry too is a fantastic ally with incredible speed and above average HP and attack. The Dark World is now accessible, and the player clears story triggers to access the next boss. The Ende Shield is acquired and will be used by Hassan until the final fight, then it goes to Chamorro. The Sorrow Giant is the next boss, susceptible to Spirit Punch. This boss primarily uses physicals and can critical often, but also takes huge damage from Spirit Punch. Hassan and Drango become the primary damage dealers, while Terry supports. Drango now carries the Sword of Ramius to use as an item to cast Bykill instead of it being used as equipment. Akbar comes next, and is a tricky fight for positioning. The two enemy cohorts are defeated first, and they can be confused with the Star Fragment. Akbar is on a cycle. First action is area damage, either Strong Breath or Quake attack. Second is a physical attack. And third is either defense or a revive spell. Hero needs to land both Sap and Stop spell on Akbar to stop the third attack in the cycle. Terry keeps the party alive with the Genkane and a single use of the World Dew from Zenithia. With both the Miracle Sword and the Mystic Armor, Hassan recovers HP automatically per turn. Sometime after Akbar, either before or after the next boss, a Metal King Slime is defeated. They have a 10% spawn rate outside of the prison shrine in the Dark World. Between Hassan, Drango, and Terry, all three have access to a low hit rate critical attack, and Barbara can clean up any other enemies with Medante. This amount of experience is crucial for the entire team to survive the upcoming Deathmore fight. Zuikaku and Shokaku are next, a fairly simple and scripted fight. Shokaku takes a ton of damage from Spirit Punch, and Zuikaku is whittled down after, all with the standard strategy. Drango buffing with Sword of Ramius, Hassan dealing damage, Terry healing or dealing damage, and Hero using support spells and Fire Claw. Afterward, the final boss is open. The very fastest speedrun times will skip the first visit to the Deathmore Castle, but almost all routes will enter the castle to obtain the Demon Spear and Dragon Book. A visit to the Real and Dream worlds are made to get another World Dew, the Metal King helmet for Hassan by cashing in 70 medals, and to turn Hassan into the Dragon class for extra HP and attack. A final visit to Greetown allows the party to get any last equipment and purchase world leaves from the casino at 20,000 gold per leaf. Deathmore's castle is relatively short, and a Metal King sword is obtained at the very end. Finally, Deathmore awaits, which is easily the most complex and difficult fight of the run, perhaps in all of Dragon Quest speedrunning. All three phases are on patterns with certain tells, but nothing is ever completely guaranteed on turn order or what exactly the boss is going to do. Deathmore can switch between patterns at certain intervals, so only in few situations can the player exactly know what's going to happen, and even then the incoming targets of attacks are often random. Phase 1 features large group damage from strong fire and ice attacks and the Explodat spell. He can poison an ally, heal himself, and use freezing waves to remove buffs. Hassan can deal around 500 damage a hit every 2 turns in the ideal situation, so this phase has the potential to go very fast. But the huge group damage attacks can really stunt the player. The only healing the player has for the whole fight is a single World Dew, Terry using the Genkane, and Chamorro using Heal All. Hassan, Terry, and Drongo all hold some world leaves too. Phase 2 is perhaps the most variable and frustrating part of the fight. He is a primarily physical damage dealing enemy in this phase, but uses spells such as Upper or Bykill to buff himself. He can use strong defense then attack on the same turn, keeping his 1/10 damage reduction, and he has the potential to go up to 4 times in one turn. Any phase 2 where he uses Upper and or Bykill very early in the fight is very dangerous. He is susceptible to Spirit Punch, and if Hassan can get set up without seeing an Upper from the boss, it has a potential to be a very fast fight. Pattern recognition is crucial here, where he does have Violent Breath Attack that can catch players off guard, but it can be foreseen sometimes. Phase 3 features the head and 2 hands. The head begins on a cycle of 1 action per turn, and the fight is played very carefully to ensure that anyone put to sleep on turn 1 is awakened, then a powerful Spirit Punch and Medante are both landed by the end of the first cycle. The left hand is taken out first, since it can revive the other parts. Both hands are susceptible to Spirit Punch, but the head is not. The hands can mostly use physical attacks, but the right hand can use freezing waves. Deathmore himself can choose between the 2 cycles. The player must pay very close attention to which cycle is happening. Even when the head is alone, the fight is far from easy. Amos has the Give Life armband, also known as the Kerplunk Bracer, which fully revives the party upon his death, which is saved for this phase. Finally, Deathmore has the ability to use Medante himself when his HP is low and he's alone, which is always a risk. After a tense and arduous fight, the game closes out.
Dragon Warrior 7 begins on the tiny island of Estard, the only landmass in the entire world. One day, the hero, Prince Kiefer, and Maribel explore the Forbidden Ruins, and upon placing stone fragments into one of 18 pedestals, find themselves transported to the island of Rexwood. Upon saving the island's residents from monsters and returning home, the heroes discover that they were transported into Rexwood's past, and that the island has now appeared in the present. As they visit more islands and solve their troubles, the continents of the present are slowly reassembled. At the end of Disc 1, we confront the Demon Lord Orgodemir, who split up the world and sealed it away, and unlock the final island. We then revive God, awaken the 4 elemental spirits, and then have one more showdown with Orgodemir. The general progression of this game involves collecting shards, visiting a past version of a new island, visiting that island again in the present to collect more shards, and repeating. At one point, 3 islands become available at once, but besides that, the island progression is completely linear. The combat engine is pretty consistent with previous entries, especially DQ6 Super Famicom. The DS 436 ports are also based on this engine. You can manually control your characters or select from 5 AI tactics that can be set independently for each character, all of which see use in the speedrun. We also get some NPCs to join our party, some of which participate in combat. They can be controlled and introduce more randomness to some of the early boss fights, but they're also nearly invincible and effectively occupy the second slot of our party for purposes of enemy attack targeting. DQ7 uses the same class system as DQ6 with the addition of monster classes. Experience points will level up your character to improve your stats, but a number of battles will increase your class rank to teach you new skills and unlock new classes. Classes also apply modifiers to your stats while you use them, but there is no long-term impact on your growth if you level up with a class. All basic classes apply net negative stat modifiers, but some later classes and some monster classes are net positive. Monster classes are unlocked by using hearts, items similar to the Book of Satori in DQ3 or the Metal Babel and Dragon Scrolls in DQ6. Additionally, mastering human classes can unlock advanced human classes, and mastering monster classes can unlock more powerful monster classes. When planning our classes for the speedrun, we have to keep in mind that some of our party members come and go. Kiefer will leave the party right before we unlock the ability to change classes, and Maribel leaves near the midpoint of the game to be replaced by Melvin and Ira, though Maribel replaces Melvin for the majority of Disc 2. Gabbo stays for the whole show. If you've played this game casually, you know that it is long. There are 18 islands we need to push through, each with their own sub-stories, plus 3 more vignettes in Disc 2. Let's run through it. Estard has lots of story triggers, followed by some puzzles in the ruin, and then it's off to Rexwood. Rexwood has the first battle of the game about 25 minutes into the run. We need to get 6 experience points from Maribel so that she learns the Blaze spell off of the first boss, Golem, and then we fight a crab, who can potentially heal himself 25 times. The length of both boss fights is determined by how often Hank, an NPC ally, decides to attack or cast sap. Often, he'll just do nothing. In-Gao's story triggers involve multiple inn visits, so before each one we grind some experience points until we run out of magic. Then we fight a big ol' head. As long as you parry when he builds up power, he's not a real threat. On our way out, we grind Hero to level 8 to learn Return, our fast travel spell, which is our last experience point grind until the final dungeon. Dialect is just 20 minutes of statues showing you flashbacks. Wharf is where we get Gabo, our 4th party member, but first we have to fight Deathpal. You can't use magic against him, so we throw repellents, aka holy water, at him. Like nearly all bosses in the game from this point forward, he will randomly act either once or twice per round of combat, and if he repeatedly chooses to act twice, he can push you out of the fight. However, with average luck, he's not difficult to take out. Falrod is front-loaded with some cutscenes and a simple boss fight against the Fallroider, but ends with a dangerous boss gauntlet. In general, Gabo will attempt to stun the enemies in this chapter with Bark, Maribel will cast sap on the bosses to lower their defense, and everyone else attacks or heals. The Machinoid often calls for help, so we will stun his backup and take him out first, and then try to heal as fully as possible before finishing the fight. The final boss, Evil Mech, has a lot of attack and defense power and can cast Magic Wall to make it much harder to stun him or lower his defense. If he puts up Magic Wall before sap lands, you'll have to turtle for about 5 rounds until it wears off and hope he doesn't use his second cast right away. The hero's upper spell can be used for safety in this fight to raise your own defense power to help stall him out. Verdim has soap opera drama, some anteater looking thing, and most notably Cavemon. Cavemon has some jewel bag buddies who start out by lowering your defense, so we start the fight with our armor removed to reduce the strength of their defense spell and re-equip it during the second round. Cavemon introduces you to mid-tier magic, and until he runs out of MP, he can potentially wipe your party at any point by casting Firebane and Fireball in the same turn, so you need to play it safe until then. Cavemon alternates between taking 1 or 2 actions per round, and he is not able to cast the same spell twice in one round, but there is still about an 11% chance he'll cast both spells on his even turns. However, he only has 24 MP, with Firebane costing 6 and Fireball casting 4, so it's easy to count where he's at. Deja is another story trigger island, but notably it provides the runner with their first real breaks around the 5-hour mark of the run. Dharma is a notorious difficulty spike. Kiefer has just left the party, the bosses are much stronger than Cavemon, and you don't have access to your spells or skills for the first one. To mitigate this, they give you an NPC helper for each boss fight, as well as 3 World Leaf items to revive with, and the Wonder Rock, an infinite use heal spell item. The first boss fight, Inup and Gons, hit extremely hard and get frequent critical hits that deal 2.5 times the normal hit's damage. To mitigate their damage, we parry with our lead character Maribel and hope she and the NPC Kasim soak most of the hits. We don't have access to magic in this fight, so we can't stack upper, and even the best armor you can buy or obtain from Lucky Panel doesn't stop Gabo from getting deleted by 1 critical hit. All characters should be kept at max HP and should be parrying if they aren't there. On top of the potential damage these enemies threaten you with, Inop can use the Sandstorm ability to blind all of your characters and cut your hit chance for several rounds. Next, we have to survive a 6-battle tournament, DQ4 style, but without the opportunity to heal with herbs between battles. Each battle here consists of 1 unique human enemy and 3 of a kind monster allies. Each enemy has different status weaknesses, so you have to know which combination of sap, sleep, surround, and stuns to use on each one. Our ally for this one, Zaji, is able to heal, attack, or cast Bang. You typically want to see him use Bang early on to wipe out the monster allies so that the fight quickly gets more manageable. The final boss of the scenario, Antoria, has a devastating attack that can potentially kill 2 of your party members outright, in addition to the Firebane spell, but he is vulnerable to both stuns and sleep, so the priority is on pinning him down. Much like Evil Mech, Antoria is capable of using Magic Wall to reduce the effectivity of sleep, stuns, and sap, and if he manages to use it early, you'll be taking a lot more damage. Your ally, Fossey, has a similar loadout to Zaji, and can both heal you or contribute damage with Snowstorm. After Dharma, we finally unlock the class system, so it's time for a class grind. We grind in past Ingao because that's the weakest enemy zone where battles will count toward class ranks at our current character levels, and we aren't trying to gain more experience points right now. Hero starts out grinding the Dancer class until he matures at rank 5, and then switches to Warrior class, learning Sword Dance when Warrior matures. This ability is our main source of damage from here on out, allowing you to attack 4 random targets at 75% damage, effectively triple the damage of a normal attack for no cost. Maribel will take the Mage class for Blazemore and Boom. Gabo starts on Thief until he learns Knockdown, a move that lets you remove a vulnerable enemy from combat, and then switches to the Healer monster class until he learns Heal All. After the grind, Maribel and Gabo switch to the Mariner class because it gives more HP, defense, and agility than being classless. Hero stays on Warrior for the HP, attack power, and defense power it boosts, and because he'll be finishing the class during the second grind. He will need 6 more battles to finish his second grind than everyone else, so we can take up to 6 random encounters between now and then with little to no time loss. For now, our boss strategy is going to involve Hero using Sword Dance, Maribel using Blazemore or Boom, and Gabo healing. Dune has a couple of bosses in it, but the first stretch after a Dragon Quest grind segment is usually free, and Bone Rider and Seto are no exception. Trage has 3 boss fights and they're equally safe, but afterward we gain access to free world leaves anytime we have 0 in our inventory, and we obtain the Blessed Staff, which casts Heal More for free in battle. This will be used extensively by Maribel and Gabo to save MP, since the Mariner class does have a hit to its max MP stat. Lidorid's boss can annoyingly reset the battle using Time Sand, but after the fight you get Time Sand yourself to reset boss battles that go wrong as long as Gabo isn't dead. In Hamelia we buy a Fireclaw that Gabo can use in battle to cast Blazemore. We also get the Bounce Sword, which is a temporary damage boost for Hero, but more importantly casts the Bounce spell in battle to reflect magic for a few turns. Drakus' lair has some cool water level puzzles where you can use trick shots with the pots to skip some of the buttons. Dracos himself has 2 mid-tier area attacks, so he can be difficult if he keeps taking 2 actions per round, but if someone dies, your NPC ally can attempt to revive them for you. The upper spell helps mitigate both his normal attack and his beats down the party laughing area attack. Probina, Lumen, Mardra, and Melvin all unlock after Hamelia. We prioritize the stops that give you equipment first and split up Lumen because it requires multiple visits. Probina is first and includes the biggest skip of the run. By talking to somebody who's supposed to be standing outside of talk range, but barely isn't, we can skip the boss of Probina, saving a whopping 5 minutes in this all-day speedrun. Next, we go unseal the legendary hero Melvin, who has high durability compared to our underleveled party, as well as the Heal More and Guardian abilities, the latter of which forces Melvin to receive all enemy attacks for the turn, or until he is disabled. Note that if an area spell or breath attack is used on the party while Melvin is using Guardian, it will hit him 4 times. Lumen's first visit gives us the Tempt Sword, which can put enemies to sleep on hit even when combined with Sword Dance. Mardra doesn't give us a whole lot, but it saves some movement to do it in between Lumen visits. Against both bosses on this island, Melvin will spam Guardian after Gabo puts Bounce on him with the Bounce Sword, causing Melvin to reflect all enemy spell damage. Zoe Mage is ruined by this combo as he is entirely magic damage. Zeppel can easily outdamage the Blessed Staff with his Ice Breath while Melvin uses Guardian, but if he doesn't spam it, Melvin should survive. Lumen's second visit pits you against the Hellvine, who is mainly physical damage, so you can buff Melvin and have him spam Guardian, as long as he doesn't fall asleep to Hellvine's Sweet Breath attack, which unfortunately has 4 chances to put him to sleep while he's using Guardian. After Lumen, we lose Maribel, but we gain Ira, so it's time to do our second and final class grind, this time in past Dharma since our party is a little higher level. Hero sticks with Warrior until it is mastered, granting him the Evil Slash ability, a move with low hit chance that always scores a critical hit, used later to kill a couple of King Medals in the final dungeon. Gabo returns to the Healer class until mastering it, learning the Heal Us ability, our only form of area healing in the run. Melvin takes the Lipsy monster class to learn Cyclic, a lose-a-turn ability that also reduces the target's defense power to 0, our only way to reduce defense power with Maribel gone. Ira starts out as a 3rd level warrior and continues until maturity, then swaps to Dancer until she learns Sword Dance. From here on out, the character roles will be as follows. Hero and Ira will primarily throw out Sword Dance every turn. They will occasionally stop to support the team with revival or status cure items. Melvin will serve as a backup healer under AI control or use Guardian or Cyclic against vulnerable bosses. Gabo is our primary healer, but still occasionally uses the Fireclaw or Howl for damage. He has high base agility and receives all agility boosters we pick up, so typically Gabbo will go first and heal whoever you tell him to, and Melvin's AI will heal whoever needs it the most at the end of the round. Gorges has a lot of backtracking, but its bosses aren't difficult. Labrys has the easiest boss fight in the speedrun, maybe the entire DQ series. Coastal is a long one with a lot of backtracking, but it's the last pedestal in the ruin to get through. The first boss, Gamadius, has 3 targets all with low HP, but if he puts your party to sleep with 1 sweet breath, they can gang up on you. However, typically Gabbo removes 1 with knockdown and Melvin stuns Gamadius, and from there it's free. The second coastal boss, Bellamar, can do close to 200 damage with a critical hit, but surprisingly only acts once per turn, so he's no threat. With all the islands complete, it's time to unlock the Skystone and use it to collect exactly 1 item, and then head to the Demon Lord's lair for round 1 with Orgodemir. In his humanoid form, Orgo will start off on a fixed pattern of 5 moves, starting with Blazemost, and then he switches to a random pattern. When Orgo uses Freezing Waves to debuff your party near the end of his fixed pattern, Melvin uses the Bounce Sword, and then uses Guardian during the random pattern until you see Blazemost again. His most dangerous move in the random pattern is Explodette, which the Guardian Bounce combo turns against him. Note that both of his forms randomly get 1 or 2 moves per round, but if his first phase switches patterns as his second attack, his turn resets and he can potentially act 2 more times. This is also important to keep in mind later in the final battle. The Caterpillar form is safer than his first. It's entirely random and mostly area attacks that you can beat with Heal Us, but he does have a shoulder tackle ability that hits 1 target for about 160 damage, potentially killing someone if combined with his breath attacks. After Orgodemir is defeated, it's on to Disc 2, which starts off slow with the God Revival and Crystal Palace segments, combined about an hour of cutscenes and plot triggers, and then a 3rd climb up the coastal lighthouse. During this time, Maribel joins our party, replacing Melvin until the final dungeon. After that, we awaken the Fire Spirit and fight him in battle. He has a ton of HP but only acts once per turn, so he's not dangerous. Counter his single target damage with Heal All or the Blessed Staff, and his area damage with Heal Us. Next, we awaken the Earth Spirit, but there's no boss here, just some backtracking in Dune and a new dungeon to crawl through. After Earth, we go back to Gorges, climb a pretty forgettable tower, and then navigate a pretty unforgettable 3-dimensional maze. It's impossible to explain in words how to navigate this maze. At the end of the maze, we fight Ningel, a simple boss but fairly dangerous. All he can do is attack, get critical hits which will kill anyone who isn't parrying, and use Sword Dance. Like in Op and Gons, we have Maribel stand in front and parry all fight, but this time we can use upper for safety and spend all of our remaining leaves if needed. As a last resort, Ira can try to use Life Song, an area revival ability that takes 2 turns to use, or Gabbo can throw the Time Sand to reset the fight. You do not want to wipe to this fight as we're set up to death warp to the opposite end of the island after the battle and it takes several minutes to walk back. Finally, the Aqua Spirit just kinda revives with no effort needed on our part, and then we enter the final dungeon. Halfway through the dungeon, we unlock the front door as a shortcut and proceed to the egg room. These eggs have monsters inside, but they will all be single monster encounters. We break them open looking for Metally S, a version of the Metally that calls for help and then merges with the backup to form a King Metal. The King Metal is vulnerable to lose a turn skills, so Hero is free to attempt Evil Slash while Ira, Gabbo, and Melvin pin it down. We hope to kill at least 2 before proceeding, but if you run out of eggs, you may either have to try to find a random encounter King Metal in the dungeon, or go back to Coastal's lighthouse and kill some Metabols, or proceed underleveled. The final dungeon has a 4-way split at the very end with 1 piece of legendary equipment down each path. You'll always want to grab the Oceano sword, but for safety you should grab the Fuego helm and possibly get the Gaiala armor as well. You can only grab 1 per visit, so you'll have to cast outside and start from the front door to get additional equipment, costing about 2 minutes each, but this also gives you an opportunity to safety save before the final boss. The final battle against Orgodemir is much more complicated than the first. This time, he starts out in Caterpillar mode and acts similarly to Phase 1-2. He has 2 single target attacks and 2 area attacks, but only acts once per turn. He isn't difficult to survive, but you want to end this phase with as close to full health as possible. You should keep rough track of his remaining HP, and starting about 3 turns before you end the phase, Hero should cast Upper on Melvin, and Melvin should use the Bounce Sword on himself. You want both buffs to cover the second phase's first 2 turns. If you find yourself in a good position at the start of the turn where he'll be pushed over, Hero and Ira can use Squall Hit to ensure he doesn't get another action. Otherwise, Gabbo can use Heal Us and you can push him over later in the round with Sword Dance. If his humanoid form kills you, it's likely going to happen right away. He rotates through 10 attacks, so his first 2 turns will always be Blazemost and an attack, then Explodette and Wind Beast. Melvin should use Guardian to reflect the spells, while Gabbo uses the Bless Staff to heal off the other attacks. Next, he'll use a strong Fire Breath and put someone to sleep on a turn where you're trying to drop 1 or sometimes 2 World Dews, and if the sleep stops your dew, it can ruin you. If you get this far, you should be fine. He'll soon get back to the start of his attack pattern and kill himself on the next Explodette, if not the turn before. Phase 3 is the epitome of bosses that randomly act once or twice. He now cycles through 3 pairs of moves, choosing 1 move from the next pair for each action, and each pair has 1 move that's stronger than the other. If he chooses his single target heave attack on the same turn as his terrifying cry area attack, the heave target is instantly dead. This phase is also capable of inflicting poison and confusion, the latter of which can only be removed by Ira, but with the Fuego Helm equipped, there's a low chance of Ira becoming confused herself. The Melty Candy Bar phase is by far the most complex fight in the game. He has 3 attack patterns, the first 2 of which are random and 1 to 2 actions per turn, and the third pattern is fixed and only 1 action per turn. His first pattern is full of damaging attacks, and he may take your last World Dews away if he stays in it long enough. The second pattern includes support moves such as Meditate, which is a 500 HP self-heal, Magic Wall, and 2 abilities to call for reinforcements. The third pattern opens with Mega Magic, which will hit everyone for a little under 200 damage, but if you survive it, you basically get 4 turns to recover. Note that because his early phases are random skill pools and he can take 2 actions in each pattern, he can jump to Mega Magic at any time from his other patterns. Even from his first pattern, there's about a 1% chance that he'll use a breath attack, transition twice, and then unleash Mega Magic and most likely wipe your whole team. He may even throw in a skill from his second pattern for good measure, effectively acting 5 times in 1 turn, including the 2 transitions. This phase has a ton of health, but also has a small chance of being affected by Cyclic if Melvin has nothing better to do. After a grand total of 14,300 damage, plus any healing and regeneration his latter 2 phases do, Orgodemir will fall, and after a short farewell tour, relative to the length of the rest of the game anyway, the run is finally over.
Dragon Quest VIII starts out with the hero and Yangus in Fairbury, alongside of King Trode and the horse princess, Medea. After exploring the first area, the team is on the chase to find Dual Magus, the twisted jester harnessing dark, unknown power. Early in the journey, Jessica joins after the Calamari fight, and shortly after Angelo joins at the Maia Abbey. The journey to find Dual Magus continues, venturing to a few new towns and areas, and eventually returning back to Trodain, King Trode's land. The party visits a few more key places, gets access to a ship of their own, and eventually finds Dual Magus in the Dark Ruins and defeats him. However, soon after, many people become possessed by the staff Dual Magus was wielding, including Jessica, Sir Leopold, and Marcello, and the main villain Rapthorn is soon revealed. After helping the Godbird Imperia, the party takes down Rapthorn's first form at the Black Citadel. They then undergo an orb hunt, and then finally confront Rapthorn in the sky for an ultimate battle. This game noticeably changes pace from the DQ6 and 7 engines, dropping the job system and only features 4 main party members. In turn, it features a few new mechanics compared to prior games, including a skill point system for each character, an alchemy pot to create custom items, and the useful tension system, which allows party members to build power over turns to deal higher damage later on, all at a risk. All of these are critical to the speedrun. The route we'll be discussing today is known as the Spear Route, referring to hero skill points being allocated to the Spear tree, but there are a few alternatives over the history of the game's speedrun, including Sword Route for Hero and Magic Burst Route for Jessica. The start of the run features clearing out a number of encounters for early game experience points. The party fights One Night Stand, a special Slime Knight encounter for early experience. Hero begins investing in the Spear skill line, and Yangus starts out with Fisticuffs for an early attack bonus while being barehanded. The first boss is Geyser, which does not pose much of a threat. While on the world map, an important speedrun technique is particular movement of the camera. Oscillating the camera slightly for some strange reason causes the player to move slightly quicker. The next boss is Calamari on the way to Paragon Key, fought at level 8. Calamari is on a cycle of Flame Breath, physical attack, sweep attack, physical attack, sweep attack, physical attack, and then repeats. With careful healing and defending, the player can mitigate the damage, but it is still a narrow fight to survive. Tension is notably used here with Yangus, while Hero primarily heals and defends. Soon after, Jessica joins the party. Jessica will invest skill points early into Stabs for Accelerado spell and Fisticuffs for unarmed damage for Metal Slime hunting soon. Trode makes the Alchemy Pot, used immediately for the Reinforced Boomerang upgrade, and will get many uses throughout the run. This Alchemy Pot takes time, unlike its future iterations in the series. After visiting Maia Abbey, the Ruined Abbey is explored. A lucky Metal Slime can be defeated along the way, but the party will be back here later to grind heavily. Tortured Soul is the next boss, featuring highly damaging Sizzle spell and the ability to summon cohorts. Jessica brings Accelerado to the table, increasing agility for turn order stability. Tension is used, and the player manages dealing with the cohorts and the boss simultaneously. Angelo joins and will invest in Stabs to get access to the Bounce and Oomph spells. Back to Alexandria to sell a bunch of gear and buy many holy water for an upcoming grind segment in the Abbey. The run defeats 45 Metal Slimes here to massively power level, easily the most amount of Metal Slimes in all of Dragon Quest speedrunning. Holy Water can be used as an item to deal 1 guaranteed damage, just like in Dragon Quest IV, which is essential for defeating Metal Slimes reliably if they do not run. Hero and Yangus learn critical hit abilities to help defeat more of them, and once Jessica reaches level 22, the party moves on. The skill point routing for the rest of the game is as follows. The hero invests in Spears to 59 to learn Lightning Thrust to help clear Metal Slime encounters, and then invests in Courage to learn Zap and Omni Heal. Yangus invests some into Humanity to learn Whistle, then pushes Axes as much as possible for the rest of the game. Jessica invests in Stabs to 31 to get Bounce and Magic Barrier spells, then invests in Whip to eventually get Twin Dragon Lash, a very powerful attack, and for attack boost with whips. Finally, Angelo invests in Stabs to 65 to get Oomph, 13 into Charisma for the skill that reduces tension from enemies, and then remaining points into Sword for extra damage. Another major benefit of power leveling is that the party can use Holy Waters or the Holy Protection spell to avoid random encounters reliably. After the events in Ascantha, the party proceeds towards Pickham, then into Trap Box, the next major boss fight, and the one that benefits from the grind the most in the short term. Trap Box can put the party to sleep, confuse an ally, and can critically hit allies. Tension with Hero's Multi-Thrust and Yangus's abilities are used, along with Jessica's new Oomph spell for large damage output. The party heads towards Trodane, and now that Liquid Metal Slime, also known as LMS, can appear, it's already time to grind again. There are some route divergences to either grind here longer or put off grinding until a later segment with King Metal Slimes, also known as KMS. But many routes spend extra time here fighting LMS, and the very fastest runs will opt to fight KMS later. There's a trade-off. More LMS now means dual Magus fight is easier, but at a time cost overall to the run. Just like the previous Metal Slime segment, this is a highly variable segment, and players sometimes either get more or less LMS defeats based on how much time they wish to gamble with. With Yangus's new Padfoot ability to reduce encounters and the party's high levels, the trek to Don Mole is easy, and the boss fight is fairly easy too. Hero's Zap and Jessica's Boom spells help clean up the cohorts. Don Mole mostly uses physical attacks and can confuse an ally, but goes down to a few tension hits. The party now gets the ship, then explores various parts of the world to pick up some resources. After a visit to Baccarat and Neos, a few more alchemy pot items are made, including a recovery ring, the Mercury bandana for Hero, and Eros' bow for Angelo. The Dark Ruins are quickly inspected, then the player heads towards Argonia. The Great Argon Lizard fight is also a relatively simple fight, and now Jessica has access to Twin Dragon Lash. Back in Argonia, an Yggdrasil leaf can be purchased for 1,000 gold. Hero will soon get a Demon Spear from Alchemy from the rewards in Argonia. Then the player prepares to go to the Dark Ruins. Dual Magus is the next boss fight and is a major challenge to the team. The large grinding segments against Metal Slimes were all to defeat this boss. Phase 1 is a mostly manageable fight. Dual Magus summons clones right away, so the general strategy is to have Hero and Yangus use Tension and Zap/Parallax, respectively, to take out the clones. Jessica supports with Oomph and Frizzle spells, and Angelo heals and sometimes attacks. This phase primarily deals straightforward damage, but Dual Magus can use Gleaming Eyes to put someone to sleep, and has access to Freezing Waves. Phase 2 is a much more dangerous fight. He has a large range of attacks from full party attack spells, strong physical attacks, and a lose a turn ability. He now goes twice per turn. The standard game plan is used, but an emphasis on landing Helm Splitter with Yangus is made to lower defense. Hero and Angelo will take turns healing depending on the context. Jessica continually uses Accelerattle to somewhat reliably cause the team to act before Dual Magus. As mentioned before, the full party lose a turn ability along with Freezing Waves can really put the party in danger. A long fight later, Dual Magus goes down. The party chases evil Jessica towards Arcadia, then proceeds to Rhydon's tower. This area is complicated casually, but a straightforward stroll in the speedrun. Another recovery ring and the Charon's bow is acquired. Then the alchemy pot yields the first life bracer, which restores HP automatically in combat per turn. The evil Jessica fight is next. Rock Bomb shards, which are one-time consumable items, are brought to deal with the summoned shadow enemies. Evil Jessica can use Ka-Sizzle, Ka-Frizzle, and Ka-Crackle for large damage, but Angelo uses Bounce to reflect them back. Lucky fights involve less enemies summoned and more focused damage on Jessica. Next is the Irkutsk area, which does not have a boss, but does feature some encounters with numerous grouped enemies. Jessica's new abilities given by Domenico and Hero's Zap spell help clear them out. Captain Crow is next, guarding the Illuminated Sea chart. Single target bosses are fairly manageable at this point in the run, but he does boast a few interesting techniques. He can tension boost himself, but Angelo's special skills can negate the tension, effectively causing a waste of the boss's time. Otherwise, he uses physicals, freezing waves, and thin air, and goes down fairly easily. Off to the isolated plateau in Empichu. Empiria is up first, featuring huge physical attack damage and some area effect spells, and freezing waves. Empiria's defense is so high and difficult to bring down, on top of the ability to blind the party, so the party relies upon critical hit attacks from Hero and Yangus, and spell damage from Jessica and Angelo to whittle it down. Next is Gemon, a considerably easier fight. Gemon has allies, uses strong physicals and breath attacks. He is susceptible to Dazzle, and notably does not use freezing waves like every other boss recently. He goes down to the standard strategy. With access to flight via the Godbird Stone, the trip to Triangoli is made, and Sir Leopold is hunted down. A quick visit to Slime Hill for the Conqueror's Axe for Yangus, then off to the next fight. Evil Sir Leopold features the next evolution of strong breath attacks, so a breath attack reduction cheese is used. The boss uses strong physicals, has the ability to crit, and has a full party lose a turn mechanic. Even with Hero's Omni Heal and Angelo's Multi Heal, the party can struggle to keep up. The gang escapes imprisonment, then chases down Marcello at Neos for a noticeably easier fight. Marcello's moveset includes single target Ka-Frizzle spell and wind sickles, but otherwise is rather easy to keep up with. After a fraternal dispute, the Black Citadel rises, and the game's final dungeon. The party is already prepared, so they dive right in. For the first time in a long while, the random encounters are threatening. They are all ran away from, but some can do some serious damage on failed runs. A Sage's Stone is acquired, then after unlocking a return point, the party leaves to get some highly strung cheeses from the Cheese Hut man, and makes a Scourge Whip from Alchemy for Jessica, then goes back into the dungeon. Metal King Slimes can appear in the dungeon, and are a nice to have if the encounter is reasonably winnable. Rapthorn 1 is fought as a standalone fight at the heart of the Black Citadel. Rapthorn features a wide range of attacks. Strong spell damage, violent breath attacks, huge single target critical hits, freezing waves, gleaming eyes for single target forced sleep, and a party-wide curse ability. The strategy changes slightly here. Jessica's whip damage with Twin Dragon Lash becomes so potent that Yangus focuses on lowering defense via Helm Splitter, and Jessica becomes the primary damage dealer. If Jessica can hit super high tension without getting stunned, or getting hit by freezing waves, and can outweigh any dazzle effects, she can do massive damage to the boss. The dungeon begins to crumble afterwards, and the party clears a few forced fights with a combination of area effect spells and single target focusing. Ruin is the next boss fight, and only uses strong physical attacks once a turn. After some buffs, it goes down with ease. It's now time to collect the 6 orbs, Dragon Quest III style, then prepare for the final battle. For the first part of the battle, the party must offer prayers to the Godbird Scepter for many turns before the actual battle begins. The Tactics command is used here to heal automatically, and otherwise the party must just stay alive. The Rapthorn battle finally begins. Rapthorn has some fearsome attacks, including violent breath attacks and the twin orb attack that deals around 150 damage twice and can hit the same party member. As is a staple now in the series, Rapthorn has Magic Burst, which deals huge damage with a cooldown. Like always, a good battle comes down to not getting hit by freezing waves at an inopportune time. The strategy is similar to Rapthorn 1, but all consumable items can be used, including the high-strung cheese to boost tension for the whole party. Although Rapthorn's damage can be devastating, the party has some incredible tools to deal with it all, especially compared to some other Dragon Quest runs. After Helm Splitter, tension, and some proper planning, the boss goes down and the victory lap begins. Dragon Quest IX starts out in the Angel Falls area, where the hero is an unseen guardian angel serving their duty alongside of Aquila, their mentor. Soon tragedy takes place in the observatory, and the hero falls to Earth and appears to be human for a while. After chasing some leads, they make their way to Stornway and have the opportunity to recruit some allies. They revisit the dilapidated observatory and learn of their goal to retrieve the 7 golden figs to awaken Yggdrasil. They then travel the world defeating bosses and helping people to achieve this goal. Then after getting the 7 figs, Aquila appears to betray the team and take the figs. A chase begins, and the plot of the Triumvirate and ultimately Corvus begins to unfold, and the party tracks them down to the Giddish Empire. After defeating King Godwyn, reviving Yggdrasil, and learning about Corvus's plight, they track down Corvus in the realm of the Almighty and defeat him. In the same way Dragon Quest VIII changes pace from its prior 2 entries, Dragon Quest IX once again changes pace and feel considerably. The class system is back, although in brand new form compared to the Dragon Quest VI and VII engines. It somewhat resembles Dragon Quest III's, but has many nuances that make it unique, including how spells and skills are only available when using a particular class rather than being learned to the party member. This is the first mainline Dragon Quest game to feature enemy encounters that trigger based on physically interacting with enemies, and most modern games in the series would follow this formula. Alchemy makes a return, being used sparingly in the speedrun. This game also features a combo system where the same attacks used in battle will deal a multiplier successively. Although not relevant to the speedrun, this game has massive post-game content unlike anything seen in the series up until this point in time. The hero starts in Angel Falls, collecting minimal resources before heading off to the Hexagon to defeat the Hexagoon. Level 4 is the benchmark, and an attack fan is picked up along the way. Hexagoon is a simple fight, but tragedy can take place if Hexagoon happens to outspeed the hero when trying to heal, which is very rare. Afterwards, the hero makes their way to Stornway and immediately gets access to ally recruitment and makes 3 allies. They will be referred to as X, Y, and Z for their roles for the rest of the run. The starting classes are Warrior, Martial Artist, Cleric, Mage, Thief, and Minstrel. All 3 new party members start as mages before they change class later. The party is leveled up to learn Frizz and Acceleratle spells. Next boss is White Knight, a boss with a strong physical attack moveset. His most dangerous move is Multi-Thrust. which deals a single target attack 3 to 4 times to all allies and can hit the same ally multiple times. The strategy for the early game bosses is to first speed up with Accelerotl, then to stack attack magic, so the 3 mages will use the Frizz spell for combo damage while Hero supports with healing. Making their way towards Brigadoon, the party fills their inventory with herbs and moon herbs for paralysis healing, and then treks towards Morag. Morag is fought similarly to White Knight, stack combo damage on spells. The boss can use a few very not threatening single target moves such as Crack or HP Hoover, but it has an extremely dangerous attack that attacks the whole party and can paralyze. Often this fight is either very easy or very hard. Copper swords are purchased in town for an upcoming segment, then the party heads towards Coffin Well. In the Corn Tomb, metal slimes can be defeated, and one is defeated now to prepare for the next fight. Raging Contagion is the first boss that will attack twice per turn. It can use debuffs such as Kasap and Decelerotl, and can put the party to sleep. It can also physical attack a member with Poison Element, and any party member that gets hit twice back to back will likely get knocked out. Now the party can reliably use the Crack spell for much more damage, and Hero learns Crack too, so all 4 party members can possibly combo together. After some cutscenes in the observatory, the hero learns the Zoom spell for fast travel, then the party can clear either the Port Laffin sequence or the Tower of Trades sequence. The Tower of Trades is chosen, as its boss is slightly easier, but Port Laffin is visited quickly for some gear upgrades. The boss of the tower, Master of None, will alternate between 1 action per turn and 2 actions per turn. He uses lightning and whoosh skills and has a chance of critically powering up a magic spell. Side note, this game is the first appearance of critical spells in the series. Although his AoE damage is scary, he is on a semi-fixed pattern, and with good planning, his damage can be mitigated. Defeating Master of None unlocks the class, also known as Vocation system, but it is not utilized just yet. Stornway houses the Crack Pot, this game's alchemy pot, which unlike in Dragon Quest VIII, will yield results immediately. Many herbs are bought and alchemized into superior medicines which heal for 60 to 70 HP for the upcoming boss fight. Leviathan is the next boss, a major hurdle. Leviathan only attacks once per turn, but has a huge HP pool. It has 3 actions: physical attack, sweep attack, and tidal wave. It's a simple fight to execute, but if Leviathan uses too many full party attacks, the party simply can't keep up. It's worth noting that this party will never have a dedicated healer for the rest of the run, and items are used for the entirety of the game to heal. Successful Leviathan fights require huge combo damage with the Crack spell. Coup de grace can be used with the hero, who is a minstrel, to help avoid physical attacks and possibly counter them. Defeating Leviathan unlocks access to a new continent, which changes the pace of the run for a while. Many resources will be retrieved and some Zoom locations are visited. The party picks up a dungeon map, which will be later used. Bloomingdale is a major hub for purchases, and superior medicines can now be bought. After some cutscenes here, it's finally time to change classes. There will be many class changes to gain skill points, but by the time the grind is over, party members will settle into their final classes. In this game, party members start over at level 1 when starting a new class, but early levels can yield large skill point gains that can be transferred between classes. X is made into a martial artist to learn the Psych Up skill for boosting tension. X will later be the primary damage dealer for the run. Y and Z now become minstrels, which will allow them to equip swords in the short term, but more importantly lets them learn the Metal Slash ability with their unused skill points up until this point. And Hero becomes a thief to also learn Metal Slash. The team accepts the quest for Armamentalist and Gladiator, which are 2 classes that need to be unlocked. They both have a minor quest that has a specific requirement each that takes some time to set up, but the classes are invaluable. Back to the Corn Tomb, this is the first instance of what's called the map method, which is a manipulation method that allows the party to open the grotto map menu, which then sets one of the random memory addresses in the game, and therefore allows the party to somewhat reliably have enemy models spawn consistently when loading an area in a particular way. Note that this does not guarantee which enemies appear in battle, it just affects the model of the enemy on the map, and at least that enemy will be present. For example, a metal slime model on the map may be one single metal slime in battle, or it may be joined by up to 2 allies. This method is used a few times in the run for getting metal slime type enemies to appear. Further, using this method, preemptive encounters can be achieved against enemies if a certain timing window is hit while interacting with them, which is incredibly useful for metal slime type encounters. The requirements for the Armamentalist quest is to defeat 2 metal slimes with setting up a move called Wizard Ward, which is a spell damage reduction spell. First, a metal slime is defeated just to level up, as the party starts at level 1 with their new classes. Next, for the quest, the goal is to have the battle take 2 turns. Turn 1 boosts tension on Y, while Z sets up the Wizard Ward. Then on turn 2, if the metal slime doesn't run away, hope that everyone attacking with Metal Slash is enough to defeat it. After this is done twice, back to all trades to turn in the quest. Another class change takes place, and the classes are now Warrior, Thief, Thief, and Thief. Now the Gladiator side quest will commence, which is to defeat 3 regular slimes by getting to super high tension with a character that can use Dragon Slash. Compared to the previous quest, it is a very simple quest that takes a little bit of time. Before changing classes, the party heads towards the next dungeon, the Bad Cave, to unlock the door entrance and to fight a few metal medleys, which are the game's most rewarding metal slime available up until this point. The map method strategy is used here, but metal medleys know the Kerfrizz spell, which can be devastating, as it hits 3 random targets with the Frizz spell. After leveling up to get the skill points, it's back to all trades to hand in the Gladiator side quest and change classes once again. The most of the party turns into Gladiator temporarily to invest 4 skill points into Guts to get a permanent HP boost. Then the final classes are as follows. Hero is an Armamentalist, who will primarily be using the Egg On ability to psych up party members. Hero will be using Armamentalist spell primarily, such as Sap and Acceleratle. X is a Gladiator, and will be the main damage dealer with strong single target physical skills. Y is an Armamentalist, and will be using the Force skills, which will augment X's weapons with elemental attributes to deal much more damage to every boss in the game from here on out. Finally, Z becomes a warrior and is the party's tank. As noted before, there is no dedicated healer on the team, so the goal is to have Z absorb as much damage as possible with her high defense. Both Y and Z will be the primary healers with items. Back to the Bad Cave to fight the next boss. The Metal Medley encounter is grinded a few times to get enough of a level for the next few bosses. Party members invest the majority of their skill points after this grind. Hero focuses on shields, as Hero is primarily a support character. X invests into Guts skills, Y invests into Force skills, and Z invests into Courage for HP and defense boosts, then later into shields. Tyrantula is the next boss fight, and even with all the preparation up until this point, it is still a mild challenge. The boss can use a single target lose a turn ability, and any party member trying to use tension will lose their tension. The boss also has a full party poison attack and attacks twice per turn. This boss fight starts the trend for the strategy for the rest of the game's major bosses. The goal is to have X deal damage with either 50 or 100 tension. Hero and X will use Psych Up skills on X, while Y uses the appropriate Force skill on X, which again is the elemental augmentation. Tyrantula is weak to wind, so Gale Force is used. X will use Double Up on himself, which will increase his attack at the cost of his defense. Z is around to soak damage and heal. Importantly for this fight and many upcoming fights, Z has the ability Whipping Boy, which allows her to cover all incoming damage and effects for an ally. Z can use Whipping Boy in some situations to prevent X from losing tension via sleep or lose a turn skills, which is applicable in the Tyrantula fight. Finally, X lands a massive attack with the Claptrap ability, a 125% modifier. Overall, the strategy is risky at almost every boss, and lost battles are very hard to recover if X gets knocked out, as no one else can deal damage, but it is also exceptionally fast and powerful of a strategy. After Tyrantula, the party gets a ship. 3 out of 7 figs have been attained up until this point, so it's time to get the rest. All of them are independently available, so the game plan is to travel the world, retrieve as many resources as possible and set up warp locations, and then defeat the bosses. Botsereg and Swine Dimbles are visited first, then some major shopping is done in Gleba to equip the party defensively with magic reduction gear. After getting the magic key in Gleba, the party heads for the first boss of the 4. Grand Lizier is up first. She attacks once per turn, but does large single target damage, a breath attack, and has a full party lose a turn ability. Because Grand Lizier is a dragon type, the strategy is a little different than standard. The party can set up a huge combo with the Dragon Slash ability, and since X is a gladiator and is one of the slower party members, his multiplier should be higher. Otherwise, the standard setup of Psych Up, Frost Force, and Sap is used to power X up, and then a Dragon Slash combo finishes the boss. Garth Goyle is next, and is a very easy boss, as it has been available to the party since before Tyrantula. The boss boasts high defense, but it can be easily lowered with Sap. Then comes Lars Tisneris, a much more problematic fight. This boss can use the Boom spell, which is a major upgrade to this point on boss party-wide damage. It can use a full party lose a turn ability and attacks twice per turn. Finally, it can use the Dazzle spell, which is devastating to the gladiator trying to hit physical attacks. As opposed to most fights, an emphasis on getting 20 or 50 tension is made as opposed to 50 or 100, which is slightly less than usual, so that X has a better chance of landing a few hits without getting stunned, as opposed to going all in on 1 or 2 hits. The last of the 7 figs is guarded by the Dreadmaster, who is also a big threat in a different way. Dreadmaster can boost its own tension and use a combination of physical attacks and spells. Its Double Trouble move deals huge single target damage, and when tension is boosted, it often one-shots an ally. Tension boosted Crackle spell can also be devastating. It is not uncommon to use an Yggdrasil leaf here. Dreadmaster often takes a minimum of 2 50 tension hits from X. Getting to 100 tension requires landing a 50-50 chance of moving from 50 to 100 tension, which is either great or a wasted turn, so depending on the situation the gamble is made. After 7 figs are retrieved, Aquila seemingly betrays the party, then the next phase of the game takes place in the Wormwood Creek area. The next dungeon is the Bowl Hole, which has the liquid metal slime encounter. The map method is used here to spawn liquid metal slimes, and a few are fought to support the party for the rest of the game. The extra levels are primarily good for max HP so that characters can possibly survive incoming critical hits from upcoming bosses. Gadrongo guards the Wormlight Bow, and after the grind is one of the easier bosses. It can use physical attacks, a critical hit move, and can dangerously paralyze the party. But X's setup to deal damage is massive here, and he can now use the gladiator skill called Blind Man's Biff, which is a 150% attack modifier on a random target, but when there's only one target it doesn't matter. Greynarl is next, and is one of the easiest bosses in the game. His only really damaging move is his light breath attack. He only goes once per turn, and because he is a dragon type enemy, the strategy is the same as the Grand Lizier fight, which is to set up the Dragon Slash combo for big damage by X. At the bottom of the Upover town, a Nitrich encounter is waiting, which is deceptively difficult. It comes with 2 minions, and the Nitrich has a boosted chance of blocking physical attacks with its shield, an annoying but unfortunately commonplace mechanic in upcoming bosses. Most undead bosses are 200% weak to the light element, meaning that X's life force boosted attacks will deal 200% more damage compared to the 150% on most bosses. The hero must be alone for an upcoming segment, so the rest of the party is deposited as Stornway, and an ethereal armor is made for the hero, which will later go to Z for the endgame. Hero fights the aggro sculpture fight by herself, which is fairly menial. Entering the Gortress, the hero meets Sterling, then retrieves the rest of the party and prepares to fight for the first of the Triumvirate, Gorham Hog. This boss attacks once per turn, but does incredible physical damage, and a commonplace critical hit can potentially take out an ally. However, he is weak to light, and the standard strategy does massive damage to him. Something that hasn't been discussed yet is how landing a sap during some of these boss battles can make a huge difference of ending the fight earlier. But given how tight healing and positioning is, the party only really gets 1 or 2 times to attempt to cast sap per boss battle. Defeating this boss yields the ultimate key. Visiting the observatory in the Realm of the Mighty, the party picks up a number of resources to primarily be sold for gear. Shields start becoming incredibly useful for the team, as they can both block physical and magical incoming damage at a % chance. The white shield is found here, along with the mighty armlet to boost X's damage output. With the ultimate key, the party gets the Falcon Sword from the ship's barracks. The Falcon Sword will attack twice with all gladiator skills, and with the standard boss strategy, the damage output is increased even further. They then visit Doorbridge's secret shop to buy the Charon's Bow for Y, which will primarily be used as an item to heal all party members in battle for 30 to 40 HP, one of the few healing methods. A few more defensive pieces of equipment are bought, then the party heads to Giddingham Palace for a few bosses. Hootingham Gore guards the palace and is joined by 2 Carmors. This boss is one of the easiest bosses, as its only really scary move is to use the Kafuddle spell on a party member to confuse them. Angel bells are brought to mitigate this possibility. Otherwise, it uses fairly manageable spell attacks, and the Carmors will go down with a 5 tension claptrap with X, and then Blind Man's Biff is used on Hootingham Gore after some tension boosts. The ascent to Giddingham Palace's top floor is quick, then it's time for Gores v Purvis, one of the game's most difficult bosses. Purvis has a wide range of attacks, including strong physical attacks, a physical attack that can knock down an ally and make them lose tension, Hatchet Man, and Multi-Slash. All of his moves are dangerous and he goes twice per turn. If X dies in this fight, it's almost definitely a lost fight. The player must play risky by nature to win, and Z must aptly use Whipping Boy to prevent X from getting targeted by lose a turn or instant death via Hatchet Man. Purvis goes down to Funereal Force, a dark type element. Next up in the gauntlet is King Godwin, which has 2 phases. Phase 1 is relatively easy, as he does not deal huge damage. He alternates 1 and 2 actions per turn. King Godwin can use an orb attack that attacks twice, just like Antoria and Rapthorn in the previous 2 games, and has Thin Air and Disruptive Wave abilities. The most important aspect of this fight is to end the fight with good health into the next phase. Phase 2 is way more dangerous. He goes twice per turn and has a large array of moves, including Critical Hit, Kafrizzle Spell, Disruptive Wave, and Paralyzed Breath. He is 200% weak to light damage, but unfortunately has a shield and can possibly block incoming physical attacks. His damage is hard to keep up with, but if Z is targeted, instead of other allies, she can tank damage very effectively with the Ethereal Armor, thanks to her huge defense and the armor's spell damage reduction. After the descent to find Corvus in the palace's depths, it's finally time to venture to the final dungeon, the Realm of the Mighty. This dungeon features refights of the 3 Triumvirate first. All 3 are just as strong as their original forms, but have less health. Goreham Hog and Hootingham Gore go down relatively easily, but Purvis is still a major threat with his dangerous moveset. Yggdrasil Leaves may be used, but an emphasis on keeping all resources for the final battle is made. At the top, Corvus is fought twice on separate occasions. Corvus 1 is a mildly difficult fight. He has access to a number of moves including Strong Physical Crash, Disruptive Wave, and Kaswoosh, which can deal either high or low damage to the party. He has a tendency to waste a turn and laugh. The standard strategy works particularly well, as he is also 200% weak to light. On the way down to fight Corvus's final form, Barbarous blocks the way. Barbarous is a dragon, which means it's time for the Dragon Slash strategy. Barbarous has a skill that decreases defense and agility, and combined with his claw attack, he can deal significant single target damage. His Dark Breath attack is also somewhat dangerous. But usually the fight does not last long, as the Dragon Slash setup only takes a few turns to set up, and it does incredible damage. Finally, it's time for Corvus 2, which is far and away the most dangerous fight in the game. He has a massive health pool of 4800 HP, and has a large plethora of attacks, including critical hit, extra damage somersault physical, ice, dark, and paralyzed breath attacks, Kerfrizzle spell, lullaby for single target sleep, disruptive wave, and the now staple magic burst. The party really struggles to keep up with his damage, and the only healing options are still superior medicines, the Charon's bow, and the one-time use of Yggdrasil dew on top of any Yggdrasil leaves left over. As with Corvus 1 and the Triumvirate, he is 200% weak to light, and it is possible to 3-turn the boss if the player plays exceptionally risky and gets lucky with 2 sap spells and gets 100 super high tension on X. But most of the time, emergency healing impedes that strategy. Blind Man's Biff has a very small chance of missing naturally, but thankfully Corvus 2 does not have a shield chance like some other bosses. With patience and some gambling, X will survive long enough to land the final blow, and the game closes out. Dragon Quest X is the MMO RPG of the series, a large departure from the standard releases in the Dragon Quest mainline entries. It has not yet been localized to date, and the only version of the game is in Japanese. It is a very, very large game with tons of content, including many special events and throwbacks to the other entries in the series. There are 5 versions of the game, which are separate story arcs, and many quests across all of them for players to tackle. The battle system occurs in real time. Commands are put in via the menu, but the player must actively maintain spacing and dodge by moving their characters around. This game features a robust class system, which has similarities to Dragon Quest IX's but is expanded much further, and the game also features a tribe system for which there are over 5 tribes to choose from and unlock. Although this game is through and through a Dragon Quest game, it is not very popular for speedrunning for some obvious reasons. However, there are some speedruns of the first version of the base game, Awakening of the 5 Tribes, which involves starting a new character and defeating Nurgle. However, content from the latest versions of the game are accessible as part of the run. This segment will be short, but we'll briefly discuss what goes into the route. Before the run starts, it's important to note that the modern speedrun route of the latest version must take place at a particular time, where there is a limited access special Metal Slime event for the player to gain experience points. The run starts off as an ogre warrior on the Dwarf continent, and the initial questline for the chosen race is tackled first. An angel slime cap is received immediately, which gives a +3 times multiplier bonus to EXP for characters under level 99. Boss difficulties can be adjusted, and bosses fought on the hard difficulty give 2 times EXP multiplier, which is set to hard immediately but will be changed later. The zoom, or return spell, is learned early on. Quests give the first bit of EXP, and the first boss is fought with the fan weapon and the ice bolt spell. Some quests are undertaken and some temporary allies join. The goal is to unlock the ability to fast travel between many places. There is a limit on how much warping the player can do, with some exceptions in the areas unique to version 1 of the game. Among these quests is the quest to unlock the Mount, which is a vehicle for traveling faster while exploring. It is referred to as a dole board and is the main method of traveling. The tavern is accessible, which allows for addition of party members to the team. Unlike Dragon Quest 3 and 9, new characters created in this way will join at a level higher than 1 and are immediately usable. This system is very unique due to the MMO nature of the run. The way it works is that other human players have the ability to register their characters as recruitable allies to other players when they log out. So, the speedrun strategy is to effectively roll the dice and check for opportunities for good player characters that can join the party and have the AI system control them. Typical strategy involves getting a cleric and some battle masters, and these characters are often scouted for powerful gear and skills that other human players have given them. The goal of the run is to collect 6 emblems to access the final dungeon. Each of the 5 tribe continents has parts 1 and 2 of their main quests, which amount to a total of 10 emblems. The strategy is to get the first emblem for each continent, then get one of the part 2 scenarios to get to 6 emblems total. The next boss showcases the new party, where the player character supports with the sap spell, and the others dish out damage. This finishes the Dwarf Continent quest and nets the player the first of the 6 emblems. From here, the game generally follows the progression of hunting down the next quest lines and bosses, sometimes switching out allies at the tavern for a party upgrade. Sages and Battle Masters are the most common allies. As in Dragon Quest IX, sages are not as specialized as mages or clerics, and clerics will still get some use later on. The Scenario 1 boss strategies tend to play out pretty similarly. The player character debuffs, the Battle Masters use double up to double their attack for a defense penalty, and then dish out damage with skills such as Falcon Slash. Most of the bosses do not pose a threat for a well-prepared party, as the AI team that joins usually comes with a lot of good gear and skills to handle them. More cutscenes, more mainline quests, and after collecting the 5 Scenario 1 keys, the second quest of the Poppet Continent is completed to get the 6th emblem key, the last the party needs. Part of the story is to return the player character back to human form. It is not showcased in this video, but the latest routes now use a class called Demon Swordsman, which was added to the game recently for large single target and AoE damage. Razuban is the second to last major boss, but is still no threat to the team. One final party swap, then into the final dungeon. Nurgle is this game's final boss, consisting of 3 phases. He begins phase 1 by attacking the party. He is only a threat to the player character really, as the other allies have much higher HP and survivability. Phase 2 begins after an HP threshold, and he will back off and summon allies, then later rejoins in this phase. The player character must keep themselves healed on HP and MP, and allies use the same strategy, double up then single target skills for damage. Nurgle's third phase is his Large Beast King phase, and has both hands as targetable enemies. Nurgle starts to do significant single target damage here, so positioning is important in the fight. The arms can be taken out to mitigate damage output significantly. As long as the cleric can stay alive, the party can keep up with Nurgle's damage output while the arms are down. After a long battle, the run ends shortly afterwards for this unconventional speedrun in the series. Dragon Quest XI starts in Cobblestone Tor with the hero going on a journey to Heliodor, where he gets condemned as a villain for being the Luminary. Eric joins after they escape, then they elude Heliodor forces as they travel the world in search of the Rainbow. In the Hoto area, Veronica and Serena join and gain access to Gallopolis, and soon after Sylvando joins too. They make their way through Puerto Valor and Octagonia and meet Rob and Jade during the tournament section. Finally, they approach the Yggdrasil tree with the intent of acquiring the Sword of Light, but then tragedy falls as they are ambushed. This begins Act 2 of the game, where the party is split into multiple campaigns. A number of side stories featuring the main characters take place, then finally the hero joins forces with Hendrik and finds the rest of the party in the desolate world. A quest to forge the Sword of Light begins, then the player finally ascends to Mordegon's Dark Castle and confronts him in a final battle. As the latest entry in the series, this game incorporates many elements of the series up until this point. The skill point system is somewhat similar to Dragon Quest IX's, but notably allows reallocation of skill points. There are 8 main characters with defined roles like in Dragon Quest IV, and the alchemy system is back and used heavily in the speedrun, but this time, the goods can be purchased when forging to finish the formulas. Importantly, the tension system is no longer a mechanic and is replaced by the Pep Power system. In the definitive edition of this game, many quality of life options were added, including the ability to run outside of battle and faster battle speed options. The speedrun starts out fairly linearly, collecting a bunch of resources until access to the first forge in the Mangle Grove. A bronze sword is made for Eric, and he invests in swords for now to be the early game's primary damage dealer while Hero supports. Tricky Devil is the game's first minor boss, and it's clearable with a good understanding of its max damage potential and staying well healed. The Grim Griffins in the King's Barrow are next, and similarly go down easy. A hot spring sequence later in Hoto, the two head to the Cryptic Crypt to fight Jarvis, a little more of a chaotic fight with 4 enemies at the start. Veronica and Serena support as guests, and importantly, Serena can use buff for defense up. Jarvis itself is on a cycle of attack or suck air, then fire breath attack. Suck air will double the next breath attack's damage, so the player must pay attention and defend accordingly. With Veronica and Serena joining, it's off to Gallopolis. Many items and chests are retrieved, and some gear is bought. Then the team heads towards the next boss and fights some enemies along the way for skill points. Eric respecs his weapon to knives to get access to Cobra Strike, a poison attack. Veronica gets a magic attack boost, and Serena goes into spears for cattle prod. Slayer of the Sands is up next, and the fight is sped up by landing poison via Cobra Strike. The boss can confuse the party and has a sizable area effect damage skill. Veronica can use sap to lower its defense. Afterwards, Sylvando joins, and through some clever use of the skill point tree system, gets access to more skill points by unlocking certain panels and then respeccing to use them freely. Sylvando gets access to Fuddle Dance, and more importantly Hustle Dance, a powerful healing skill that scales with a charm stat. When reaching Gondolia, Hero finally gets equipped with a greatsword and is set up to become a damage dealer. The next forced encounter is a fight with 2 times Corolossus. The sleeping hibiscus item is used to put them to sleep, and when Sylvando isn't healing, he can try to land Fuddle Dance. These two can deal significant damage. Jasper is up next, and Hero starts using Cutting Edge, the fantastic single target greatsword skill. Jasper's damage output is high, and can even one-shot the sisters, but he is on a fixed pattern. Sylvando and Hero can use the pet power Tempered Tantrum for huge damage output. The fight usually ends narrow with Sylvando and Hero. The team then heads to Dundrasil Ruins and gets the recipe book for Dracilian armor, a powerful upgrade for Hero whose outfit will change. The upgrade is particularly important for the next segment. In Octagonia, the tournament sequence begins with the hero being set up for single target damage and with good defenses. Still, his level is somewhat low, so none of the fights are necessarily easy. Aractagon is the next boss and is one of Act 1's most challenging bosses. Its moveset is very similar to Dragon Quest IX's Tyrantula. It can use a myriad of dangerous attacks including full party lose a turn, Kafuddle for confusion, and a very dangerous poison party-wide damaging attack that can also envenomate. Once again, Hero and Sylvando's pep powers can deal massive damage. The boss can be poisoned itself, and fights are usually scary and narrowly won. Rob and Jade join after, and the run now changes into 2D mode to fight some metal slimes for experience. 2D mode is used because of how much faster fights can be fought when using the Crackshot crossbow to summon an encounter. Eric respecs into boomerangs for the Metallicur skill, Jade into spears for lightning thrust skill. Easy battles are fought outside of Gallopolis, and the strategy is to defend with the party members until pep power is available. Then the hero, Sylvando, and Jade use Electrolight to turn enemies into metal slimes and defeat them. Regular metal slimes appear primarily, but liquid metal slimes have a small chance of appearing too. With many levels and more skill points, it's time to reallocate. Hero forgoes Cutting Edge and gets Giga Slash. Sylvando gets Gold Rush. Eric stays in Knives, and Jade stays in Spears. The party goes to the Icy region to get access to a boulder outside of the Arborian Highlands for the biggest speedrun skip of the game. By opening the map menu and rotating the camera in a specific way, the player can bypass the boulder and get access to the path towards the Yggdrasil tree. This saves a massive amount of time, including skipping the Dora in Grey and Cristalinda bosses. The first forest campfire is visited as a return spot, then the player heads towards Honolulu and defeats Tentacular for appropriate story progression later. The fight is very easy with the boosted levels. Hero uses Giga Slash to deal with multiple targets, and Sylvando uses Gold Rush for incredible damage at the cost of gold. Jade helps with multi-thrust as well. It's time to climb the World Tree Yggdrasil, lose to Jasper 2, and then begin Act 2. Sylvando's segment is very straightforward, and all battles are made trivial with Gold Rush. Jade's segment is similarly straightforward, and her spear abilities allow her to deal consistent damage in the forced encounters. Eric's and Rob's scenario fly by without much difficulty, and Hero returns to form after becoming a fish for a while. Back to Cobblestone Tour, a few multiple enemy encounters are fought, again cleared with Giga Slash. Hendrik joins as a guest, and the next boss fight, Tyriant, is fought in Heliodor Castle. Tyriant acts twice, then once per turn, alternating, and is on a fixed cycle of actions. It will summon clones, physical attacks, and the dark spell Zamel, but otherwise goes down pretty easily. Hendrik officially joins, then the team climbs Mount Pang Lai in order to get access to Rob and the Void. Both Quadra Slash for the Hero and Pearly Gates for Rob are welcome additions to the team's multi-enemy clearing capabilities. Hendrik invests skill points to learn Blind Man's Biff and Cutting Edge, and then Unbridled Blade when visiting Phenomenon after forging a Worm Blade. Aberith is the next boss, and Hero and Rob use their new abilities while Hendrik does significant single target damage with Unbridled Blade and the Worm Blade to Aberith, who is a dragon-type enemy. Sylvando joins after some cutscenes in the Puerto Valor area, then the party heads to Snipelheim to undergo the Gildiga segment. Gold Rush, Quadra Slash, and Pearly Gates clear the multi-enemy encounters easily. The Gildiga fight follows the same formula of Sap, Unbridled Blade, and Gold Rush, but now Sylvando can help heal with Hustle Dance in addition to Rob's multi-heal. A Dragon's Bane sword is made for Eric after, and he respecs to invest into a setup for the Divide and Fatal Flash skills. The Auroral Serpent is next, which poses little threat to the team. Eric's Divide and Fatal Flash skills, combined with the Dragon's Bane, does huge damage. Serena joins soon after. A few cutscene heavy segments play out, and the party visits some shrines in the sky, the Galapagos region, and then eventually Hoto to forge the Sword of Light. Tatsunaga is first fought in the town with ease, then again in Mount Fuji. Tatsunaga 2 takes 3 actions per turn and does a combination of physical attacks, lose a turn party-wide skill, and critical hits. Sylvando also gets access to the Umful spell and helps the Fatal Flash setup with Eric continue to deal incredible damage. Finally, after forging the Sword of Light, the Fortress of Fear is accessible. Noticeably, Jade's segment is skipped and she won't be present for the finale. Indignus is up next, and although he can deal large damage, all efforts are made to protect Eric to have his setup end the fight quickly. The boss can also paralyze the team. Hendrik and Hero can use Unbridled Blade themselves to deal significant damage if Eric is down. The climb in the dungeon to the top goes by quickly, where only encounters that yield access to vehicles are defeated. Sylvando's Gold Rush shines here. Next up is Jasper Unbound, and he has a large number of attacks, including Disruptive Wave to cancel ally buffs. He can summon allies, use large party-wide spells, and can critical hit. The strategy is the same here: Sap, Umful, Fatal Flash. Gold Rush is particularly helpful for dealing with the summoned Ball Heaves. Finally, Mordegon is approached. The Lord of Shadows form first. He features moves from the other Act 2 bosses with the orbs, and generally dishes out large damage. Sap is difficult to land, but naturally very important. Unbridled Blade usage helps clear Mordegon's summoned clones, but otherwise the Fatal Flash setup continues to crank out the primary source of damage. Into the next fight, very generously, the game heals the party's HP and MP and revives characters that fell. Mordegon 2, also known as Mordragon, features Mordragon and its dragon tail as separate entities. There are 3 phases to this fight, which change at certain HP thresholds. In Phase 1, Mordragon attacks twice, then once per turn alternating, and the tail acts once per turn. The tail is the primary attacker, but is on a fixed pattern mostly consisting of Fire Breath, and then ends with Disruptive Wave. Mordragon primarily laps and waits. Physical attack damage from the tail is enormous for some party members, but Serena's Kazing spell helps immensely to get dead party members up. Hendrik uses Double Up for extra damage at a risk, and Eric continues to deal huge damage. Each phase switch ends with a Disruptive Wave. During Phase 2, each enemy only acts once per turn. Eric is powered up, then put in reserve for Phase 3. and Hero and Hendrik dish out single target damage. Magic resistance is also increased during the entirety of this fight. Phase 3 features both targets at once and is the most dangerous. Now the tail can act once or twice per turn, alternating, and the tail can gobble a party member, leaving them inaccessible for a while. Mordragon is on a long pattern and can cause both enemies to go into pep mode on its third action, but with good planning, the tail can be defeated before they get a chance to capitalize the next turn. Even with the tail down early in the phase, Mordragon can dish out huge damage, but so can the team, and eventually he goes down. Here is a list of each game we covered, and the approximate run lengths for each game. And with all of that information, that covers it for this video. We hope you enjoyed. The credits for this video are not only to the individuals listed here, but to the entire Dragon Quest speedrunning communities in the world, starting primarily with Japan and spreading outwards over time. The whole community is very open-ended, welcoming, and forthcoming with sharing knowledge and routes. Thanks to everybody who helped me, ClearTonic, with completing this video. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a comment. Thanks for watching.